The gun's barrel pressed cold against the child's temple, and Ivy Hale didn't think. She moved. Glass shattered. Voices screamed in 3 languages she understood perfectly. Blood bloomed across her shoulder as the world tilted sideways. This wasn't supposed to be her life. 3 months ago, she'd been delivering takeout in the rain. Now she stood between a crime lord's son and a bullet, wondering how a girl with nothing had become the one thing Adrian Volkov couldn't afford to lose. But let me take you back to where it all began. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Hit that like button and stay until the end, because what happens next will change everything. The rain fell like accusations against the cracked windshield of Ivy Hale's decade-old Honda Civic. She sat in the driver's seat outside the Meridian Tower, watching water streak down glass that should have been replaced 2 years ago, staring at an address that made no sense. 27th floor, penthouse suite, delivery instructions, knock 3 times. Wait, do not leave until package is received personally. In 3 years of delivering food to keep herself fed and housed, Ivy had developed a reliable instinct for trouble. This had all the markings. The cash-only order placed 30 minutes before closing, the tip that was 3 times the cost of the meal, the specific, almost ritualistic instructions. She should have refused it, should have told her manager the address felt wrong, should have listened to the tightness in her chest that had kept her alive through 2 foster homes and 4 years on Chicago's streets. Instead, she grabbed the insulated bag containing 2 orders of Mongolian beef and headed for the elevator. The lobby of the Meridian Tower spoke a language Ivy had learned to read fluently. You don't belong here. Marble floors polished to mirrors. Security desks staffed by men whose suits cost more than her monthly rent. Art on the walls that served no purpose except to announce how much money someone had to waste. The guard at the desk looked up as she entered, water dripping from her jacket onto his pristine floor. His eyes performed a calculation she'd seen 1,000 times. Young woman, cheap clothes, wrong zip code, and found her wanting. Deliveries use the service entrance, he said, already looking back at his monitor. I was told to come to this entrance. Ivy kept her voice level, pleasant. She'd learned early that anger was a luxury she couldn't afford. Penthouse suite. They're expecting me. Something shifted in his expression. Not warmth. Men like him didn't do warmth for girls like her, but a kind of wary calculation. He picked up a phone, spoke too quietly for her to hear, then nodded. 27th floor, elevator on the right. The elevator smelled like money and lilies. Ivy watched the numbers climb and tried to ignore the way her pulse had started keeping time with the ascending floors. 20 stories. 22. 25. The doors opened onto a hallway that held exactly 1 door. She knocked 3 times, as instructed. Waited. The silence felt alive, breathing. 30 seconds passed. A minute. Ivy was just beginning to think she'd been the victim of an elaborate prank when the door swung open. The man who answered stood 6'3", maybe 6'4", built like violence wrapped in expensive tailoring. But it was his eyes that made Ivy's breath catch. Pale gray, cold as lake ice in January, assessing her with the same calculation she'd seen in the lobby guard, but infinitely more dangerous. You're late, he said. Russian accent, faint but unmistakable. Ivy glanced at her phone. I'm 4 minutes early, actually. You should have been here 10 minutes ago. He stepped aside. Come in. Every instinct Ivy possessed screamed at her to run. Instead, she stepped across the threshold. The penthouse was a study in controlled opulence. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Chicago's skyline. Furniture that managed to be both minimalist and clearly worth more than Ivy would earn in 5 years. And men, 4 of them, arranged around a glass table like pieces on a chessboard. But it was the man at the head of the table who commanded the room's gravity. 40, maybe 45, with dark hair touched silver at the temples, and a face that would have been handsome if it weren't so carefully blank. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost what Ivy paid in annual rent, and he held himself with the absolute stillness of someone who'd never had to raise his voice to be obeyed. Adrian Volkov. She didn't know the name yet, but she'd learn it soon enough. Your delivery girl is here, the man who'd answered the door announced. Adrian's eyes flicked to Ivy, dismissed her, returned to the man across from him. We were discussing terms, Marcus. Marcus was American, 50-something, with the kind of tan that came from ski trips and Mediterranean yachts. He smiled, but it never reached his eyes. I believe we were discussing why you think you can dictate terms to me in my own city. Chicago stopped being your city when you became unable to control it. Adrian's voice was quiet, almost pleasant. That was somehow worse than if he'd shouted. The territory dispute in Bridgeport, the shipment that disappeared in Gary, the restaurant fire in Greektown that you've blamed on faulty wiring despite everyone knowing it was retaliation for— Careful, Adrian. Marcus leaned forward. You're a guest here. Guests should mind their manners. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Ivy stood frozen by the door, hands still gripping the insulated bag, understanding with perfect clarity that she'd walked into something that had nothing to do with Mongolian beef. Put the food on the side table and go, the man by the door told her. Ivy moved to comply, grateful for the exit. She set the bag down, turned to leave. The ports, Marcus said, switching to Russian. You want them, you'll give me 60% of all shipping revenue, plus territorial concessions and 40%, Adrian interrupted, also in Russian. And no concessions. You're negotiating from weakness, Marcus. We both know it. Ivy froze mid-step. She shouldn't have understood that. Shouldn't have known Russian beyond the few menu terms she'd picked up delivering to restaurants in Ukrainian Village. But foster care had a way of teaching you things. Her third placement had been with the Petrovs, 6 months before Mrs. Petrov's gambling problem had gotten them all evicted. 6 months of Russian television playing constantly, of being forced to practice with the grandmother who spoke no English, of language centers in a child's brain absorbing everything with desperate efficiency. She'd never told anyone. It had seemed useless, just another skill that didn't matter for a girl trying to survive minimum wage and community college classes she couldn't afford to finish. Marcus was speaking again, rapid-fire Russian, his American accent transforming into something else entirely. You think I'm weak? You come into my city with your demands and your threats, but you need me more than I need you. Without my distribution network, your product rots in shipping containers. Without my political connections, the FBI starts paying very close attention to your diet. Without your distribution network, I find new distributors, Adrian said. Without your political connections, I make new friends. You're not indispensable, Marcus. You're not even particularly useful anymore. The only question is whether you recognize that before you price yourself out of relevance. The man by the door, clearly security, clearly armed, had moved closer to Marcus. 2 other men in the room had shifted their weight, hands drifting toward jackets that concealed what Ivy desperately didn't want to see. She should leave, should run, should be anywhere but here. Instead, she heard herself speak, in Russian. He's lying. The room went absolutely silent. Every eye turned to her. The delivery girl. The nothing. The nobody who shouldn't have understood a word. What did you say? Adrian's voice carried the kind of quiet that preceded violence. Ivy's mouth had gone dry. She could feel her pulse in her throat, in her wrists, in her temples, but she'd already spoken. There was no taking it back now. Marcus, he's lying. She kept her eyes on Adrian, refusing to acknowledge the man by the door who'd moved his hand inside his jacket. He said his distribution network is essential. It's not. The Chicago routes have been fragmenting for months. Half his truckers are already taking side contracts. I've delivered to 3 different warehouses in the last month that used to be his, now flying different flags. And his political connections, she swallowed. The alderman he's been paying off just got indicted. That was in the Tribune this morning. How the fuck does a delivery girl know? Marcus started. Shut up. Adrian hadn't moved, but his voice cut like a blade. He was still looking at Ivy, those gray eyes seeing her for the first time, really seeing her. Continue. I don't know anything about your business. Ivy forced the words out. But I know neighborhoods, I know territory. I've been delivering food in Chicago for 3 years, and I pay attention because that's how you stay alive. Marcus is right that you need distribution. But he's wrong that it has to be his. The South Side is fragmenting. The Near West is in play. If you moved fast, you could build your own network in maybe 6 months. It would cost you up front, but you wouldn't owe him percentage in perpetuity. She ran out of words and breath simultaneously. The silence stretched. Then Marcus laughed. Sharp, ugly. You're taking business advice from someone who delivers Chinese food? Adrian, I thought you were smarter than... What else? Adrian asked Ivy, as if Marcus hadn't spoken. What? You said you've been paying attention. What else have you noticed? Ivy's brain raced. She was so far past the point of no return that the only direction was forward. The restaurant fire in Greektown. It wasn't retaliation for territory disputes. It was about the basement. What basement? The one the owner was renting to a poker game. Ivy could feel sweat cooling on her spine. High stakes, mostly Ukrainian players. That's why when the fire started, nobody called it in for 20 minutes. They were too busy destroying evidence. By the time the firefighters arrived, the basement entrance had been bricked over. It was in the incident report. My roommate's a paramedic. She talks. Adrian stood. The movement was unhurried, economical, but every man in the room tensed. He walked around the table toward Ivy, and it took every ounce of control she possessed not to step back. Up close, he was even more imposing. Not because of his height or build, but because of the absolute certainty he carried. The aura of someone who'd never once questioned his right to take whatever he wanted. What's your name, us? He asked. Ivy. Ivy Hale. Ivy Hale. He tested it like wine. You speak Russian? A little. You understand territory dynamics. I understand neighborhoods. You read incident reports about restaurant fires. I read everything. It's free. Libraries, online. Information is free if you know where to look. Something that might have been amusement flickered across Adrian's face. How much do you make delivering food, Ivy Hale? That's not really... How much? $12 an hour plus tips. Maybe $30,000 a year if it's good. Adrian turned to Marcus. The deal is 40%. No concessions. You have 48 hours to accept. He looked at the man by the door. Dimitri, make sure Mr. Castellano gets to his car safely. We're not done here, Marcus said, standing. We are, actually. Adrian's attention was already elsewhere. His focus shifted like a spotlight moving on. You've wasted enough of my time with fantasies about your negotiating position. 48 hours, Marcus. Don't test me. The room emptied faster than Ivy would have thought possible. Marcus and his men ushered out by Dimitri and another guard whose name Ivy didn't know. Doors closing, silence settling. And Ivy, still standing there with an empty insulated bag, wondering if she was about to die. Adrian poured 2 glasses of something amber from a crystal decanter. He handed one to Ivy. I don't drink, she said automatically. Today you do. Sit. It wasn't a request. Ivy sat on the edge of a leather sofa that probably cost more than her car. She held the glass but didn't drink. Adrian settled into the chair across from her, studying her with the same intensity he'd probably used to study Marcus. Reading, calculating, finding weaknesses to exploit. You shouldn't have understood that conversation, he said finally. I know. You definitely shouldn't have interrupted. I know. And yet you did both. He sipped his drink. Why? I don't know. It was the truth. You were being lied to. I have this problem where I see things and I can't just ignore them. It's gotten me in trouble before. I imagine it has. Adrian set his glass down. What do you know about me, Ivy Hale? Nothing. I didn't even know your name until your guy said it. But you know what kind of business I'm in. It wasn't a question. Ivy nodded anyway. And you're not afraid? I'm terrified. The admission came easier than expected. But fear and doing what you need to do aren't mutually exclusive. I learned that a long time ago. Adrian smiled. It transformed his face, made him look younger and somehow more dangerous. Foster care? How did you You have the look. Resilient, observant, fundamentally alone. He leaned forward. I'm going to make you an offer, Ivy. You can refuse it. You can walk out that door right now, go back to delivering food, and we'll never speak again. But if you stay, your life changes. Everything changes, do you understand? I'm not interested in anything illegal. Everything I do is illegal. Adrian's voice held no apology. But I'm not asking you to sell drugs or hurt people. I'm asking you to do what you did tonight. Listen, observe. Tell me what you see. I need someone who understands how this city actually works, not just the parts my organization controls. Someone who can move invisibly because nobody thinks to look at her. He paused. Someone who speaks languages my enemies assume stay secret. I'm not qualified. You just recovered a negotiation worth $40 million by noticing things about neighborhood politics and reading fire reports. I'd say you're exactly qualified. Adrian named a number, salary, annual. Ivy's vision actually blurred. It was triple what she made now. It was enough to move out of the converted basement she shared with 2 roommates, enough to go back to school, enough to stop choosing between groceries and gas money. It was also probably enough to get her killed. I need to think about it, she said. No, you don't. You've already decided. Adrian stood, signaling the end of the meeting. You decided the moment you chose to speak instead of running. People like us. We don't hesitate when opportunity appears. We take it. People like us? Survivors. He walked to the door, opened it. Dmitri waited outside. Dmitri will take you home. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., come back here. We'll discuss terms and expectations. He looked at her, really looked at her, and Ivy felt seen in a way that was both terrifying and intoxicating. Welcome to my world, Ivy Hale. Try not to die in it. The drive home happened in a fog. Dmitri, silent, professional, terrifying, dropped her at her apartment building without a word. Ivy climbed the stairs to her basement unit, unlocked 3 deadbolts, and stood in the dark trying to process what had just happened. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. But when she opened it, there was just an address and a time. 9 a.m. Don't be late. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she sat at her thrift store desk and researched. Adrian Volkov, Russian organized crime. Chicago territory disputes. Most of what she found was speculation, rumor, the kind of whispers that lived in the space between what people knew and what they could prove. But certain facts emerged. Adrian had arrived in Chicago 7 years ago from New York. His organization was smaller than some, but more efficient. He specialized in what the articles called high-value logistics, which Ivy understood to mean moving expensive illegal things from point A to point B without attracting attention. He was ruthless. He was connected, and he was very, very careful. There were no photos of him entering or leaving clubs, no social media presence, no tabloid speculation about relationships or scandals. Adrian Volkov existed in the official record as a businessman who owned import/export companies and real estate holdings. Everything else lived in shadow. At 4 a.m., Ivy made coffee and tried to talk herself out of going. She listed every rational reason to refuse: the danger, the illegality, the certainty that accepting Adrian's offer meant crossing a line she couldn't uncross. By 8:30 a.m., she was in her car heading back to the Meridian Tower. The lobby guard from last night was gone, replaced by a different man who waved her through without question. The elevator rose. The hallway waited. Ivy knocked. Dmitri answered. You came. Was there doubt? There's always doubt. He stepped aside. He's in the office. The penthouse looked different in daylight, less menacing somehow, though no less expensive. Dmitri led her through a living space bigger than her entire apartment, down a hall lined with abstract art that Ivy suspected was original, to a door of dark wood and frosted glass. He knocked twice, opened it without waiting for an answer. Adrian sat behind a desk of black walnut, working at a laptop. He didn't look up. Close the door, Dmitri. The door clicked shut. Ivy stood there, hands clasped in front of her, feeling like a student called to the principal's office. You researched me, Adrian said, still not looking up. What did you find? Not much. You're careful. I'm alive. Careful is how you stay that way. He closed the laptop, finally meeting her eyes. Sit. Ivy sat in one of 2 chairs facing the desk. Adrian slid a folder across to her. Employment contract. Read it carefully. Sign it only if you understand and agree to every term. She opened the folder. The contract was surprisingly straightforward. Duties, salary, benefits, non-disclosure agreements that would have made government lawyers proud, and one clause that made her breath catch. Termination only possible by mutual agreement or upon death of employer, she read aloud. That's insurance, Adrian said, for both of us. You'll learn things about my organization. Dangerous things. I can't have you walking away after 6 months because you found a better offer. And you You need to know I'm not going to discard you the moment you're no longer useful. Or you could just kill me if I try to leave. I could, but I won't, because you'll be too valuable. He leaned back. I don't waste assets, Ivy. I invest in them. This is an investment in you. What if I fail? What if I'm not as useful as you think? Then we'll both have learned something, but you won't fail. He said it with the certainty of someone who'd built an empire on reading people correctly. Sign the contract. We have work to do. Ivy signed. The pen felt heavy, like she was signing away more than just her labor. Adrian took the contract, locked it in a desk drawer. Your first assignment is simple. I need you to map the South Side for me. Every territory, every crew, every point of friction and opportunity. You said you know neighborhoods. Prove it. That could take weeks. You have 4 days. 4. That's impossible. Nothing is impossible. Some things just require more creativity. Adrian pulled out a phone, new, still in its wrapper, and slid it across the desk. Encrypted. My number is already programmed. You report to me directly. No intermediaries, no exceptions. Questions? 1,000. 1,000,000. But Ivy asked the only one that mattered. Why me? There have to be people already in your organization who could do this. There are people who could do pieces of it, maps, analysis, language work, but no one who could do all of it while moving through the city invisible. Adrian stood, came around the desk. Up close, she could smell his cologne, something expensive and understated. You know what your greatest asset is, Ivy? It's not your Russian. It's not even your observation skills. It's that nobody looks at you and sees a threat. You're a delivery girl, a nobody. People talk around you because they don't think you matter. Thanks, Ivy said dryly. I'm not insulting you. I'm explaining why you're perfect. He offered his hand. Welcome to the organization, Ivy Hale. Try to keep up. The next 4 days blurred together in a chaos of coffee, inadequate sleep, and more driving than Ivy had done in her entire life. She started on the South Side, in neighborhoods she knew from delivery routes, and worked outward in careful spirals. She documented everything. Which buildings flew, which colors, which corners changed hands after dark, which restaurants served as fronts, and which bars operated as neutral ground. She talked to bartenders and store owners, to other delivery drivers and mechanics who worked on cars that never seemed to break down. She listened to conversations in Polish and Spanish and Mandarin, in the heavily accented English of recent immigrants, and the street slang of kids who'd never left their neighborhoods. She watched how money moved and where it got stuck, who deferred to whom, which names made people nervous, and she wrote it all down in careful detail, building a map of the South Side's underworld that was probably more accurate than anything the Chicago PD had in their files. On the 4th day, she delivered it to Adrian. He read in silence for 20 minutes, occasionally making notes in margins. Ivy sat across from him, exhausted, running on gas station coffee and convenience store sandwiches, wondering if she'd passed the test. Finally, Adrian looked up. This is remarkable. It's complete? It's more than complete. It's insightful. He tapped a section marked in red. This territory dispute in Englewood, you flagged it as a priority concern. The 3 crews fighting over it are all fragmenting. None of them has the strength to hold it, but they're bleeding themselves dry trying. It's going to collapse in the next 2 months. And when it does, whoever moves in fast with overwhelming force can claim it unopposed, but it has to be fast. If you wait for the dust to settle, someone else will already be entrenched. Adrian smiled. You're learning. Good. He closed the folder. I'm sending you to a meeting tomorrow night. What kind of meeting? Business negotiation. Small scale. I need someone to translate and observe. Think you can handle it? Yes, I think so. Don't think. No. Adrian's voice sharpened. In this world, hesitation gets you killed. You're either certain or you're dead. Which are you? Ivy met his eyes. I'm certain. Good. He handed her another folder. Background on the parties involved. Memorize it. Dmitri will pick you up at 8 tomorrow night. Dress professionally but not expensively. You need to look competent, not threatening. Where is it? A restaurant in Chinatown, which brings me to another question. Adrian studied her. How many languages do you speak, Ivy? Fluently, 3. Russian, Mandarin, English. Conversationally, maybe 6 more. Foster care teaches you to adapt fast. You pick up what you need to survive. Mandarin. Adrian looked pleased. That's useful. Very useful. Tomorrow night there will be a dispute over shipping containers held in customs. The Chinese contingent will likely speak Mandarin when they think we can't understand. I need to know what they're really saying. You want me to spy? I want you to give me every advantage. Adrian stood, signaling the meeting's end. This is what I do, Ivy. I find edges, angles, advantages other people miss. You're one of those advantages now. Get used to it. The restaurant in Chinatown occupied a narrow building squeezed between a grocery and a shop selling herbal medicines. Dimitri drove Ivy there in a black Mercedes with windows tinted past legal limits. She wore the one professional outfit she owned, a blazer and slacks bought at Goodwill for job interviews that never went anywhere. Stay close to Mr. Volkov, Dimitri said as they pulled up. Don't speak unless he asks you to. Don't make eye contact with the other parties. Your staff tonight. Invisible. I understand. Do you? Dimitri turned to look at her, his weathered face serious. These people we're meeting, they're not like Marcus. They're not all posture and bluff. They're professionals. If they sense weakness, they'll exploit it. If they sense deception, they'll respond with violence, so you stay invisible. Understand? Yes. Adrian was already inside, seated at a round table in a private room at the back. 2 Chinese men in their 50s sat across from him, flanked by younger men who had the look of security. Everyone stood when Adrian gestured for Ivy to join them. Gentlemen, my associate, she'll be helping with translation tonight. The older of the 2 Chinese men, Mr. Chen, according to the briefing, nodded. I was not aware translation would be necessary. My English is adequate. Of course it is, Adrian said smoothly, but in delicate negotiations, precision matters. I'd hate for us to misunderstand each other over linguistic nuances. They sat. Tea was poured. Pleasantries were exchanged. And then, business. The containers, Mr. Chen began, have been held for 3 weeks now. Your assurances that customs would be handled have proven optimistic. There were complications, Adrian said. Nothing that can't be resolved. Complications that are costing me money every day they sit in that port. Mr. Chen's English was indeed adequate. Better than adequate, actually. But Ivy noticed how his colleague kept leaning in to whisper in Mandarin, rapid translations or clarifications. She listened, waited, stayed invisible. The agreed fee was for delivery within 10 days, Mr. Chen continued. We are now at 21. I believe that merits a reduction in payment. The delays weren't caused by inadequate logistics, Adrian countered. There was a surprise inspection, random, nothing to do with our arrangements. Mr. Chen smiled thinly. Nothing is random in your line of work, Mr. Volkov. Surely you know that. The colleague leaned in again, whispered in Mandarin. Ivy's pulse jumped. He's lying, the colleague said in Mandarin. The inspection wasn't random. Someone informed the authorities, perhaps to pressure us. Mr. Chen's expression didn't change, but his next words came harder. I'm beginning to wonder, Mr. Volkov, if perhaps these complications serve your interests more than mine. After all, the longer those containers sit, the more desperate I become. And desperate men accept worse terms. I don't play those games, Adrian said. But Ivy saw the calculation in his eyes. He'd heard the accusation. He was considering whether to acknowledge or deflect. The colleague whispered again. We should walk away, find someone more reliable. Mr. Chen nodded slightly. I think perhaps we should discuss alternative arrangements. They think you tipped off customs, Ivy said quietly. In English, so everyone could hear. The room went still. Mr. Chen's eyes narrowed. You understand Mandarin? Yes. And you've been listening to private conversations. That's why I'm here. Ivy kept her voice steady despite her racing heart. Mr. Volkov hired me to translate, which includes understanding what's being said in all languages. This is... The colleague started to stand, indignant. Sit down, Wei, Mr. Chen ordered. He looked at Adrian. An interesting strategy, Mr. Volkov. Bringing a translator without mentioning she speaks Mandarin. What else haven't you mentioned? I didn't tip off customs, Adrian said flatly. I have as much interest in those containers moving as you do. More, actually, since my reputation is on the line. Then who did? That's what I'm trying to find out. Adrian glanced at Ivy. Tell them what you found. Ivy hadn't found anything. She'd been given a briefing folder and 4 hours to prepare. But she understood what Adrian was doing, creating an opportunity, testing whether she could think on her feet. She took a breath. The inspection wasn't random, but it also wasn't targeted at these specific containers. Customs has been increasing random inspections at that terminal by 30% over the last month. They're under pressure from the federal government to demonstrate they're serious about enforcement after some bad press. Your containers just got caught in a wider sweep. It was partly true. She'd read about the increased inspections in the Tribune. The rest was educated guessing, but she delivered it with enough confidence that it sounded like verified intelligence. Mr. Chen studied her. And you know this how? I read. I pay attention. I talk to dock workers and customs brokers. Ivy held his gaze. Mr. Volkov hired me because I notice things other people miss. This is one of those things. Silence. Then Mr. Chen laughed, sharp, surprised. You found this one on a delivery route? Something like that. Remarkable. Mr. Chen looked at Adrian with new respect. You have interesting taste in employees, Mr. Volkov. Very well. If what she says is true, then we can proceed, but the terms must change to reflect the delays. They negotiated for another 90 minutes. Ivy translated when necessary, stayed silent when not, and watched Adrian work with a precision that was almost beautiful. He never gave more than necessary, never took less than possible. Every concession was calculated, every demand strategic. By the time they left, the deal was restructured. Adrian would take a 10% reduction in payment but would handle all future customs complications. Mr. Chen would provide references to 3 other potential clients. In the car, Dmitri driving them back to the Meridian, Adrian turned to Ivy. You improvised. I didn't have enough information to do anything else. I know. That's why it was impressive. He poured himself a drink from the car's minibar. You understood what I needed. Plausible explanation. Delivered with authority. You gave me that. Well done. I could have been wrong. If they'd checked, they won't check. And even if they did, you were close enough to the truth that it wouldn't matter. Adrian sipped his drink. This is the work, Ivy. Partial information. Educated guesses. Strategic improvisation. You did well tonight. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just keep doing it. He looked out the window at Chicago sliding past. I'm putting you on retainer for translation work. Meetings like tonight. You'll be paid separately for each, plus your base salary. Dmitri will handle scheduling. How often? 2 or 3 times a week? Initially. More as word spreads that I have access to a translator who speaks. How many languages did you say? 9, counting the conversational ones. Adrian smiled. Then yes, much more often. Welcome to the deep end, Ivy Hale. Bet. The next 6 weeks transformed Ivy's life so completely that sometimes she barely recognized herself. She quit her delivery job, moved out of the converted basement into a 1-bedroom apartment in a building with working heat and windows that actually closed, bought clothes that fit properly and a laptop that didn't take 5 minutes to boot up. But more than the material changes, she felt herself changing, growing harder, more observant, less shocked by the casual violence that lived in the margins of Adrian's world. She attended meetings in restaurants and warehouses, in the backs of moving trucks, and the private rooms of hotels she'd never have been able to afford on her own. She translated negotiations over shipping routes and territory disputes, over payment schedules and enforcement protocols. She learned the language of this world, the euphemisms and codes, the things people said, and what they actually meant. Logistics meant smuggling. Consultation fees meant bribes. Handling a problem could mean anything from intimidation to murder, depending on context. And she learned about Adrian. He was meticulous, paranoid even. He trusted no one completely, checked every piece of information 3 times, and maintained backup plans for his backup plans. His organization ran lean, maybe 40 people total from what Ivy could tell, but every single one was chosen for competence and loyalty. He was also, she discovered, a father. She didn't learn about Luca until nearly 2 months in. Dmitri mentioned him in passing. Need to reschedule the Tuesday meeting. Mr. Volkov has parent-teacher conferences, and Ivy's surprise must have shown. You didn't know? Dmitri asked. He's never mentioned family. He doesn't, not to outsiders. Dmitri paused. The boy's 8. He lives with his mother, Adrian's ex-wife. Custody arrangement is complicated. Adrian sees him twice a week when he's in Chicago. How long have they been divorced? 3 years? Since just after they moved here from New York. Dmitri's expression suggested that was all he'd say on the subject. But Ivy noticed after that how Adrian's schedule carved out Tuesday evenings and Saturday afternoons. How he never scheduled meetings during those times. How his phone remained on during those blocks, the only time she ever saw him leave it active. She noticed other things, too. The photograph on his office desk, turned just slightly away from where visitors would sit. A child's drawing tucked into the corner of his laptop case. The way his expression would sometimes go distant during meetings, as if his attention had drifted somewhere else entirely. Adrian Volkov was a criminal. A man who'd built an empire on illegal activity and maintained it through careful applications of money and force. But he was also a father who never missed parent-teacher conferences. Ivy filed that information away with everything else she was learning. In this world, information was currency. Understanding the people around her was survival. She just didn't realize how much that understanding would matter until the night Marcus came back. It happened at a meeting in a warehouse on the Northwest Side. Routine negotiation with a crew that controlled several lucrative routes through O'Hare. Ivy was there to translate. One of the crew's senior members spoke only Polish. They were an hour into discussions when the doors burst open. Marcus Castellano walked in with 6 men, all armed, all pointing weapons at Adrian and the 3 people with him. I thought we had an agreement, Adrian said calmly, as if guns weren't aimed at his head. 48 hours to consider terms. It's been 6 weeks, Marcus. Agreement was contingent on you keeping your word, Marcus snarled. You were supposed to stay out of the South Side, but I've got reports of your people moving into Inglewood, claiming territory that was mine. Was being the operative word. Adrian didn't move. Neither did Dmitri or the 2 other guards with him. The crew's fragmenting, just like my consultant predicted. I simply filled the vacuum. Your consultant. Marcus's eyes found Ivy. The delivery girl. You're letting some random nobody dictate business decisions? I'm letting someone with better intelligence than you've managed in 10 years dictate tactical decisions, yes. Adrian's voice remained level. Now put the guns away, Marcus. You're not going to shoot me in front of witnesses, and we both know it. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm tired of playing games with you Russians who think you run this city. Then do it. Adrian stood, arms spread. Shoot me. Start a war you can't win. See how that works out for you. The silence stretched like piano wire. Ivy could hear her own pulse loud in her ears. Then Marcus lowered his gun. His men followed suit. This isn't over, Marcus said. It never is. Adrian straightened his jacket. Now get out. We're conducting business. Marcus left. But Ivy saw the look he shot her on his way out. Not anger. Something colder. Calculation. She'd made an enemy tonight. A powerful one. And she had absolutely no idea how to protect herself. After the meeting, in the car heading back to her apartment, Ivy finally asked the question that had been building for weeks. Why do you trust me? Adrian looked up from his phone. What? You don't trust anyone. Dmitri told me that, but you bring me into meetings with dangerous people. You let me hear things that could get you killed. Why? Because you haven't given me a reason not to. Adrian set the phone down. Trust isn't binary, Ivy. It's not something you have or don't have. It's something you calibrate based on behavior patterns and incentive structures. You've been reliable. You've been discreet. You've delivered value. Until that changes, I'll continue trusting you within appropriate parameters. That's not an answer. That's the only answer I have. He studied her. Why? Are you planning to betray me? No. Then why does it matter whether I trust you? Because I need to know where I stand. I need to know if... She stopped herself. If I'll protect you when Marcus comes for revenge? Adrian finished. Yes, Ivy, I will. You're an asset. I protect my assets. He paused. But more than that, you've earned a place in this organization. What happened tonight, Marcus backing down, that happened partly because you were right about Englewood. Your intelligence gave me the confidence to move. That's worth protecting. It should have been reassuring. Instead, it just reminded Ivy how transactional this all was. She was valuable. For now. But value was subject to change. The car pulled up to her building. Ivy reached for the door handle. "One more thing," Adrian said. "You did well tonight, staying calm when Marcus showed up. Not panicking. I'm impressed." "I was terrified." "I know. But you didn't let it show. That's what matters." He handed her a phone, different from the encrypted one he'd given her before. "Personal line. Call me if anything feels wrong. If you see anyone watching you, if Marcus or his people approach you, anything at all." Ivy took the phone. "You think he'll come after me?" "I think you embarrassed him, twice now. Men like Marcus don't forget that." Adrian's expression was unreadable. "Just be careful, Ivy. Watch your surroundings. Vary your routes. Don't be predictable." "You're scaring me." "Good. Fear keeps you alert. Alert keeps you alive." Ivy got out of the car and stood on the sidewalk, watching the Mercedes disappear into Chicago traffic. Then she climbed the stairs to her apartment, locked 3 deadbolts, and stood in her kitchen trying to remember what her life had been like 2 months ago. Simpler. Poorer. Safer. But somehow, impossibly, less real. This life she'd stumbled into, dangerous as it was, felt more authentic than anything she'd experienced before. She mattered here. She had value. She was seen, even if being seen came with the risk of being targeted. Ivy poured herself a drink, whiskey, the expensive kind she could actually afford now, and sat by her window looking out at Chicago's lights. Somewhere out there, Marcus was planning revenge. Adrian was building his empire, and she was caught between them, hoping her value would prove more durable than her vulnerability. She thought about calling her old roommate, her paramedic friend, anyone from her previous life who might care that she was scared. But who would she call? In 3 years delivering food, she'd made acquaintances, not friends. And before that, foster care had taught her that connections were temporary, that people left, that the only person you could truly rely on was yourself. So instead, Ivy finished her drink, showered, and went to bed. Tomorrow there would be another meeting, another translation job, another day of navigating a world that could swallow her whole if she made one wrong step. But tonight, she was alive. She was valued. She belonged somewhere, even if that somewhere might kill her. The call came 3 weeks later at 2 a.m. Ivy jerked awake to her phone buzzing on the nightstand. The personal line Adrian had given her. She grabbed it, heart already racing. "Yes?" "Get dressed. Dimitri's picking you up in 10 minutes. Adrian's voice was tight, controlled. But underneath she heard something she'd never heard from him before. Urgency bordering on panic. "What's happening?" "Not on the phone, just be ready." The line went dead. Ivy dressed in the dark, hands shaking as she pulled on jeans and a sweater. She was waiting on the curb when the Mercedes pulled up, Dimitri behind the wheel looking grim. "Where's Adrian?" she asked, climbing in. "At the office. There's been a situation." Dimitri pulled into traffic faster than was safe. "He'll explain when we get there." The Meridian Tower's lobby was empty except for the night guard, who buzzed them through without question. The elevator ride felt eternal. When the doors finally opened, Ivy found Adrian's penthouse transformed into a crisis center. Maps covered every surface, laptops glowed on the dining table. 4 men Ivy recognized from various meetings stood around looking tense. And Adrian paced like a caged animal, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Russian. He saw Ivy, ended the call. "Good. You're here. What's going on?" "We have a problem. A shipment, not drugs, something more valuable, was supposed to arrive at the port tonight. It didn't. Instead, I received photographs." He pulled up images on his phone, handed it to her. Ivy's stomach dropped. The photos showed wooden crates stacked in what looked like a warehouse, and spray-painted across them in red, a message in Chinese characters. "Can you read it?" Adrian asked. "Consider this interest on your debt." Ivy looked up. "What debt?" "That's what I need you to help me figure out." Adrian pulled up more photos, these showing documents, contracts, shipping manifests, all in Chinese. These came with the shipment photographs. Someone's claiming I owe them money. A lot of money. But I don't recognize any of these deals. Ivy studied the documents, translating rapidly. Her Mandarin was good, but these were dense, technical, full of legal terminology she had to parse carefully. This one's a contract for electronic shipment, dated 8 months ago. Value listed as $3 million. She swiped to the next image. This one's similar. Different route, same time frame, and this... She stopped. What? This is a ledger. It shows payments made, payments owed. According to this, someone fronted you $15 million for shipments that were supposed to be delivered to various buyers across the Midwest. But the shipments never arrived. The buyers never paid. And now someone wants their investment back. With interest. That's impossible. Adrian's voice went cold. I never made those deals. Are you sure? Could someone in your organization have... No one in my organization makes deals worth $15 million without my approval. This is fabricated. Someone's trying to frame me for theft. Or, one of the other men said, Victor, Adrian's financial manager, someone in your organization did make those deals and pocketed the money. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Explain, Adrian said softly. Victor pulled up a spreadsheet on one of the laptops. I've been running the numbers since you called. 8 months ago, we had 3 shipments go missing. You remember, we wrote it off as bad luck, increased security, moved on. But if those shipments were actually fronted by a Chinese investor expecting payment on delivery, and someone intercepted them and sold the goods independently, they could pocket the buyer's payment while the investor waits for money that never comes, Ivy finished. And when the investor finally asks questions, the paper trail points back to Adrian because it was technically his organization that took the investment. Who? Adrian's voice could have cut glass. Who in my organization had access to those routes? 7 people. Victor read names off the screen, but only 3 had the authority to redirect shipments without raising immediate flags. Get them here, now, all 3. Adrian, it's 2 in the morning. I don't care if it's Christmas morning, get them here. Adrian turned to Ivy. Those documents, are they sophisticated enough to fool a native speaker? She studied them again more carefully. Yes. Whoever created these knew what they were doing. The terminology is correct. The formatting matches legitimate contracts I've seen in other negotiations. If I didn't know you hadn't made these deals, I'd believe they were real. Which means our investor, whoever they are, probably believes them too. Adrian rubbed his face, suddenly looking exhausted. This is elegant. Frame me for theft, present documentation that looks legitimate, then demand payment. If I refuse, they have justification for retaliation. If I pay, I'm out $15 million for deals I never made. There's a third option, Dmitri said quietly, which is find who actually made the deals, prove the documents are fraudulent, return the money to the investor, and deliver the person responsible. Adrian smiled without humor. I like option 3. Let's do that. The next 4 hours were a masterclass in interrogation. The 3 men with access to the shipping routes arrived within 90 minutes, looking variously confused, angry, and terrified. Adrian questioned each one separately, Dmitri and Victor present as witnesses. Ivy watched from the corner, trying to stay invisible while her mind raced. She'd translated the documents, yes, but something about them nagged at her, some detail that didn't quite fit. She pulled out her phone, scrolled back through the photos Adrian had sent, studied them one by one, looking for... There. Adrian, she interrupted the third interrogation. Can I see you for a moment? He glared at her, clearly not appreciating the interruption. But something in her expression must have convinced him, because he stood, told Dmitri to continue, and followed her into his office. This better be important. The documents are forgeries. We established that. No, I mean, they're bad forgeries. I missed it at first because the Chinese is perfect. But look at this. She pulled up one of the contract images, zoomed in on the signature block. See this chop mark? It's supposed to be from the Shanghai Commercial Bureau, authorizing international trade. But the design is wrong. The characters are slightly off. This is what the real chop looks like. She pulled up a reference image on her phone. See the difference? Adrian leaned in, studying both images. You're sure? Positive. I had to research Chinese business practices for a class I took online. Authentication marks are specific, registered, nearly impossible to forge convincingly. Whoever made these documents did beautiful work on the language, but they didn't have access to the real authentication marks. Which means this isn't a sophisticated Chinese investor. It's someone pretending to be one. Someone who knows enough to be dangerous, but not enough to be perfect. Adrian stared at her. Then he started laughing, sharp, humorless. Marcus, that son of a bitch. This is Marcus. How do you know? Because he's exactly arrogant enough to think he could pull this off, and exactly sloppy enough to miss details like authentication marks. Adrian pulled out his phone, made a call. I need everything you have on Marcus Castellanos' recent activities, specifically any connections to Chinese businesses or translators. I want it in 1 hour. He ended the call, looked at Ivy. Good work. Excellent work, actually. What are you going to do? First, I'm going to verify your theory. If you're right, and I think you are, then I'm going to have a conversation with Marcus about the consequences of trying to steal from me. And if I'm wrong, then I have a bigger problem than I thought. But you're not wrong. He said it with absolute certainty. Your instincts are too good. 20 minutes later, the research came back. Marcus had indeed made contact with a Chinese translator 3 months ago. The translator, according to Adrian's sources, was young, inexperienced, and desperate for money. Exactly the kind of person who might help create fraudulent documents without understanding the full implications. It's him, Adrian said, reading the report. It has to be. He took our missing shipments, created fake documentation to cover his tracks, and now he's trying to extort money by making it look like I defaulted on a deal. What's your move? Victor asked. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, thinking. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, measured, and absolutely terrifying. We're going to let him think it's working. We're going to schedule a meeting to discuss payment terms. And when he shows up expecting to collect $15 million, we're going to give him something very different. Adrian, if you kill him, Dmitri started. I'm not going to kill him. That would start a war. Adrian's smile was sharp enough to cut. I'm going to destroy his credibility. By the time I'm done, no one in this city will ever trust Marcus Castellano again. He'll be radioactive. Ivy watched him plan, saw the pieces falling into place with mechanical precision, and understood in that moment exactly how dangerous Adrian Volkov really was. He didn't fight with guns or fists. He fought with information, with reputation, with the subtle destruction of trust that held criminal enterprises together. It was beautiful and horrifying in equal measure. Ivy, Adrian said, pulling her from her thoughts, I need you to make contact with that translator Marcus used, the young one. Find out exactly what he told her, what documents she helped create, everything. Can you do that? How am I supposed to find her? Her name is Lisa Chen. She works at a translation service in Chinatown. Victor will give you the address. Adrian paused. This is delicate work. She's probably scared, definitely in over her head. I need you to approach her carefully. Don't threaten, just talk. Find out what she knows. And if she won't talk to me, she will. Because you're not threatening. You're just another translator, asking questions, maybe offering help. Adrian met her eyes. This is what you're good at, Ivy. Being invisible, being trustworthy. Use that. The next morning, Ivy found herself in a cramped office above a dumpling shop in Chinatown. The translation service occupied 2 rooms that smelled like soy sauce and photocopier toner. A tired-looking woman in her 50s sat at the front desk. I'm looking for Lisa Chen, Ivy said. You need translation? She's with a client. Can wait or come back? I'll wait. 20 minutes later, a young woman emerged from the back room, early 20s, nervous energy, dark circles under her eyes suggesting she wasn't sleeping well. Lisa Chen looked exactly like someone who'd gotten involved in something she didn't understand and was now terrified of the consequences. Lisa? Ivy stood. My name is Ivy. I'm a translator too. I was hoping we could talk. Lisa's eyes went wide with recognition, not of Ivy specifically, but of the situation. She knew someone would come eventually. She'd been waiting for it. I don't know anything, she said immediately. I think you do, and I think you're scared. I'm not here to threaten you, Lisa. I'm here because we have a mutual problem named Marcus Castellano. Lisa glanced at the receptionist, who was very deliberately not paying attention. Not here. There's a tea shop 2 blocks down. Meet me there in 10 minutes. Ivy waited at a corner table in the tea shop, nursing jasmine tea and watching foot traffic pass outside. When Lisa arrived, she looked even more frightened than before. "I didn't know what he wanted the documents for," she said before she'd even sat down. "He just said he needed contracts for a business deal, that he had Chinese partners who needed everything in Mandarin. He paid me $2,000. That's more than I usually make in a month. I thought it was legitimate." "When did you realize it wasn't?" "About 3 weeks ago. He came back, asked me to create more documents, shipping manifests, financial records. He gave me the information, told me exactly what to write. But the numbers didn't make sense. The timeline was wrong. She stopped, fighting tears. "I told him I couldn't do it, that it looked like fraud. He said if I didn't help him, he'd tell everyone I'd already helped him create fake contracts, that my reputation would be destroyed, that I'd never work again." "So you did it?" "I didn't have a choice. You don't understand. I'm on a work visa. If I lose my job, I get deported. My family back in China is counting on the money I send. I couldn't—" The tears came now, silent and desperate. Ivy reached across the table, took Lisa's hand. "I understand. I really do. But you need to help me now. I need to know everything Marcus asked you to create. Every document, every detail." "Why? Who are you working for?" "Someone who's going to make this problem go away. But I need your help to do it." Lisa studied her for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. "I kept copies of everything. I thought maybe I'd need them for protection or something. I don't know, I was just scared." "That was smart. Can you send them to me? If I do this, if I help you, will he come after me?" "No," Ivy said with more certainty than she felt. "Because he's going to have much bigger problems than one scared translator. I promise you, Lisa. Help me, and this goes away." The documents arrived in Ivy's email 2 hours later. She forwarded them to Adrian, who called immediately. "This is perfect. Better than perfect." She documented everything, dates, amounts, even notes about what Marcus told her to write. "This destroys his entire story." "What happens to Lisa?" "Nothing. She's a victim here, not a perpetrator. I have no interest in her." Adrian paused. "You did good work, Ivy. Again." "When's the meeting with Marcus?" "Tomorrow night, and you're coming with me." "Adrian, I don't think you're the one who broke his scheme. You should be there to watch it fall apart." His voice carried dark satisfaction. "Besides, I want him to know exactly who outsmarted him. Consider it educational." The meeting happened in a restaurant Marcus chose. His territory, his comfort zone. Ivy rode there with Adrian and Dimitri, her stomach tight with nerves. "Stay calm," Adrian told her. "Let me do the talking. You're just there to translate if needed, and to watch." Marcus was already seated when they arrived, flanked by 2 of his men. He smiled when he saw Adrian, the expression of a predator certain of his kill. "Adrian, glad you could make it. I was worried you might try to skip out on our arrangement." "What arrangement is that?" Adrian sat, gestured for Ivy to take the chair beside him. "The $15 million you owe my Chinese associates, plus interest. I believe we discussed this." "We discussed a claim that I'd defaulted on contracts. We never discussed whether that claim was legitimate." Marcus's smile froze. "Are you suggesting it's not?" "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm stating a fact." Adrian pulled out a tablet, loaded the documents Lisa had sent. "These contracts you've presented as evidence, they're forgeries. Bad ones, actually. The authentication marks are wrong. The timeline doesn't match any shipments my organization actually handled. And most damning," he turned the tablet to show Marcus, "the translator you hired to create them kept copies of everything, including her notes about how you instructed her exactly what to write." The color drained from Marcus's face. "So, here's what's going to happen," Adrian continued, his voice conversational. "You're going to admit this was an attempted fraud. You're going to return the 3 shipments you actually stole from me 8 months ago." "Yes, I figured that out too." "And you're going to pay me compensation for the time and resources I've wasted dealing with your incompetent scheme." "Or what?" Marcus tried to bluster, but his voice shook. "Or I send these documents to every major player in Chicago. The Chinese especially will be interested to know you tried to frame someone for defaulting on deals with fabricated evidence." They take fraud very seriously, Marcus. Much more seriously than Americans do. I imagine they'll have questions about whether you've tried this with them too. You're bluffing. Adrian pulled out his phone, began typing. I'm sending this to Mr. Chen right now. Would you like me to CC you? Wait. Marcus held up a hand, panic breaking through. Wait. Let's talk about this reasonably. I'm done talking. Adrian stood. You have 48 hours to return my property and deliver payment. If you don't, everyone in this city will know you're a fraudster and a thief. Your reputation will be worth less than nothing. Your choice. He walked out, Dimitri and Ivy following. Behind them, Marcus sat frozen, his world crumbling with the tap of a send button. In the car, Ivy finally let herself breathe. Did you actually send it to Mr. Chen? Not yet, but I will if Marcus doesn't comply. Adrian looked satisfied. This is how you win, Ivy, not with violence, with information, with leverage. You make it so the other person has no choice but to give you what you want. That was, she searched for the word, brutal. He tried to steal from me. He tried to frame me. He deserved worse. Adrian turned to her. Did it bother you watching that? No, Ivy said, surprising herself. Actually, it felt like justice. Good. Because this is the work. This is what we do. He paused. You're learning fast, Ivy. Faster than I expected. I'm impressed. The compliment shouldn't have warmed her as much as it did. But Adrian's approval had become something she craved, even as part of her recognized how dangerous that craving was. They drove in silence for a while, Chicago's lights painting streaks across the car's windows. Then Adrian's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and something in his expression shifted, softened in a way Ivy had never seen before. I need to take this, he said, then answered. Luca. Hey, buddy. I know. I'm sorry I missed dinner. Something came up at work. I'll make it up to you this weekend, I promise. A pause. Yeah? What kind of dinosaur? A T-Rex? That's a good choice. Very fierce. Another pause, longer. I love you too. Put your mom back on, okay? The conversation that followed was brief, professional, two people coordinating logistics around a shared responsibility. When Adrian hung up, the softness was gone, the armor back in place. But Ivy had seen it, the crack in his careful facade. The reminder that Adrian Volkov was more than just a criminal strategist. He was a father who promised his son he'd make up for missed dinners. How old is Luca? She asked carefully. 8, almost 9. Adrian looked out the window. He lives with his mother. I see him twice a week. It's not enough, but it's what the custody arrangement allows. That must be hard. Parenting in this life is impossible. You can't tell them what you really do. You can't bring them into your world. You miss school events because someone tried to frame you for fraud. You lie constantly about why you're unavailable. His voice was flat, matter of fact. But you do it anyway because the alternative is not being in their life at all. And that's not acceptable. Ivy heard the pain underneath the words, the cost of the choices Adrian had made, the price of the empire he'd built. Does he know about what you do? He's 8. He knows I'm in business, import, export, that I travel sometimes, that I have meetings that can't be interrupted. Adrian turned to look at her. When he's older, he'll figure it out, or his mother will tell him, and then I'll lose him. But until then, I get Tuesday dinners and Saturday afternoons, and I'll take what I can get. The vulnerability in that admission caught Ivy off guard. This was Adrian Volkov, crime boss, master strategist, the man who'd just destroyed Marcus Castellano's reputation with a few phone calls. But he was also just a father desperate for time with his son. I'm sorry, she said quietly. Don't be. These were my choices. I live with the consequences. He straightened, the armor fully restored. Marcus will comply. He has no choice. We'll have the shipments back by the end of the week, plus compensation. This problem is solved. He was right. 3 days later, 3 shipping containers arrived at one of Adrian's warehouses, along with a payment of $2 million, restitution for the trouble Marcus had caused. Marcus himself had gone quiet, his reputation in Chicago damaged enough that people stopped taking his calls. Adrian had won, completely, decisively, and Ivy had helped him do it. She should have felt guilty, should have questioned what she was becoming, helping a criminal organization destroy its enemies. Instead, she felt proud, useful, valued in a way she'd never experienced before. That should have worried her more than it did. The breakthrough happened 4 weeks later, completely unexpectedly. Adrian had asked Ivy to attend a negotiation with a crew that controlled several restaurants in Little Italy. Routine stuff, payment schedules, territory boundaries, nothing complicated. But when they arrived, the atmosphere was wrong, tense, dangerous. The crew's leader, a man named Sal Romano, sat across from Adrian with an expression that telegraphed trouble. "We need to renegotiate our arrangement." "We have an arrangement that's working perfectly well," Adrian said mildly. "For you, maybe. Not for us. We want better terms. 60-40 split instead of 50-50. And we want assurances about protection." "What kind of protection?" "The kind that keeps the Rossi family from burning down our restaurants when they decide they want our territory." Sal leaned forward. "We've been hearing things, Adrian. Whispers that you can't actually protect your partners when real pressure gets applied. That you're all strategy and no muscle." Adrian's expression didn't change. "Who's been telling you this? Does it matter? Point is, we need better terms or we're walking." Ivy watched the exchange, her mind racing. Something was wrong here. Sal was nervous. She could see it in the way he kept glancing at the door and the tension in his shoulders. This wasn't a confident renegotiation. This was a performance. "Excuse me," she said quietly to Adrian. "Can I speak with you for a moment?" Adrian's eyes narrowed, but he stood. They moved to the corner of the room. "This is a setup," Ivy whispered. "Sal's not renegotiating. He's stalling. Someone told him to keep you here, keep you talking. You're sure? Look at him. He's terrified, and he keeps checking the time. Whatever this is, it's happening soon." Adrian processed this in seconds. Then his phone rang. He answered, listened, went absolutely still. "When?" he asked. His voice was ice. "How long ago? Where is he now?" He ended the call. When he turned to Ivy, his face was a mask of pure fury. "Luca's been taken. Someone grabbed him from school 20 minutes ago. This," he gestured at Sal. "This was just to make sure I wasn't available to respond." The bottom dropped out of Ivy's world. "Who?" "The Rossi family. Probably working with Marcus as payback for what we did to him." Adrian was already moving toward the door. "Dimitri, get everyone mobilized. I want every asset we have searching for my son. Now." Sal stood, looking sick. "Adrian, I didn't know. They said it was just business, that no one would get hurt." Adrian grabbed him by the throat, slammed him against the wall. "Where is my son?" "I don't know. I swear. They just told me to keep you talking for half an hour. That's all I know." Adrian released him, let him drop. Then he pulled out a gun Ivy hadn't known he was carrying and pressed it to Sal's temple. "Adrian, don't," Dimitri started. "He helped them take my son. Give me one reason I shouldn't kill him right now." "Because he's more useful alive," Ivy heard herself say. Her voice sounded distant, strange. "If the Rossis are involved, Sal might have connections, information. Kill him, and we lose that." It was the coldest calculation she'd ever made. Pure strategy, no emotion, just the logical assessment that a living hostage was worth more than a dead traitor. Adrian looked at her, something unreadable in his eyes. Then he lowered the gun. "Lock him in the back room," he told Dimitri. "We'll deal with him later. Right now, we find Luca." The next 6 hours were the longest of Ivy's life. Adrian's organization mobilized with military efficiency. Every street contact called, every informant activated, every favor called in. They narrowed the search to the south side, to a warehouse the Rossi family owned but supposedly didn't use anymore. "Could be a trap," Victor warned. "I don't care," Adrian said flatly. "My son is in there. We're going in." "Let me go first," Ivy said. Everyone turned to stare at her. "Let me go in first," she repeated. "They don't know who I am. I'm just a translator, right? Not a threat. I can get inside, verify Luca's there, maybe even get him out before—" "Absolutely not," Adrian cut her off. "This isn't your fight." "He's a child. That makes it everyone's fight." Ivy met his eyes. "You said I was good at being invisible. Let me use that, please. Adrian hesitated, emotion and strategy warring across his face. Finally, he nodded. You get in, you verify, you get out. That's all. You do not engage. You do not try to be a hero. Understand? Understood. They gave her a wire, a concealed camera, and a cover story. She was a translator sent by the Rossi family to verify something in Chinese documents related to their prisoner. It was thin, but it might buy her enough time. The warehouse was exactly as grim as she'd imagined. Ivy walked in through the front entrance, heart hammering, trying to look confused and harmless. A guard stopped her immediately. Who the hell are you? I'm Lisa Chen's replacement. The translator? I was told to come verify some documents. The guard frowned, pulled out a phone, made a call. Ivy's pulse thundered in her ears. Yeah, okay. Second floor, room at the end. She climbed the stairs on shaking legs. The hallway stretched ahead of her, and at the end, through a partially open door, she heard it. A child crying. Ivy moved forward, pushed the door open wider. Luka Volkov sat in the corner of a bare room, tears streaming down his face, while two men stood guard, 8 years old, terrified, alone. Where are the documents? One of the guards demanded. They're downstairs. I need to verify the prisoner first. Make sure we have the right one. It was the stupidest lie she'd ever told, but the guard just shrugged. Kid's in the corner. That's him. Now go get your documents. Ivy looked at Luka, met his eyes, saw the fear there, the desperate hope that someone had come to save him. She made a decision. Actually, she said, I need to take him with me, for verification purposes. Lady, are you stupid? He's the whole point of... Ivy pulled the gun Dmitri had insisted she carry. She'd never fired one before. Her hand shook so badly she could barely keep it level. I'm taking the child. You can let me, or you can try to stop me, but I promise you, I will shoot. The guards laughed. Then they saw her finger tightening on the trigger, saw the absolute terror in her eyes that looked enough like determination, and stopped laughing. You're making a mistake, one of them said, reaching for his own weapon. Outside, Adrian's team breached the main entrance. Gunfire erupted downstairs. Shouts. Chaos. The guard swung his gun toward Ivy. She did the only thing she could think of. She threw herself between him and Luka, covering the child's body with her own. The shot was deafeningly loud in the confined space. Pain bloomed across Ivy's shoulder, white-hot and shocking. She heard herself scream, heard Luka screaming underneath her, heard footsteps pounding up the stairs. Then Adrian was there, gun raised, expression absolutely murderous. He shot both guards without hesitation. Then he was kneeling beside Ivy, hands on her face. Ivy, look at me. You're okay. You're going to be okay. Luka, she managed. Is he... I'm okay. The child's voice high and frightened but alive. Dad, she saved me. I know, buddy, I know. Adrian pulled Luka into his arms with one hand, kept the other on Ivy's face. Dmitri, I need medical now. Ivy's vision was starting to blur at the edges. The pain had evolved into something else, something distant and floating. Did we win? She asked. Yes. We won. You won. Adrian's voice cracked. You absolute idiot. What were you thinking? Couldn't let them hurt him. He's just a kid. The world tilted. Adrian, I think I'm... Stay with me, Ivy. That's an order. Stay with me. She tried. She really tried. But the darkness came anyway, and her last thought before it swallowed her whole was that for the first time in her life, she'd done something that mattered. Something that meant she wasn't just surviving anymore. She'd saved someone worth saving. And maybe, just maybe, that made everything else worthwhile. Ivy woke to the smell of antiseptic and the steady beep of a heart monitor. Pain radiated from her shoulder in waves, sharp and insistent, but manageable, controlled. She tried to move and immediately regretted it. Don't. Adrian's voice came from beside the bed. You'll tear the stitches. She turned her head carefully. He sat in a chair pulled close to her bedside, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. His shirt was wrinkled. He'd been here a while. How long? Her voice came out raspy. 36 hours. The bullet went through your shoulder, missed the major arteries, but you lost a lot of blood. The doctors said you were lucky. I don't feel lucky. You're alive. That's lucky enough. Adrian poured water from a pitcher, held the cup so she could drink. His hands were steady, but his eyes held something Ivy had never seen before. Fear. You could have died, Ivy. You should have waited for us. You should have... Luca's okay? The change of subject made Adrian pause. Then he nodded. He's fine. Scared, but physically unharmed. You got to him before anything worse happened. Good. That's what matters. What matters is you nearly got yourself killed for a child you'd never even met. Adrian set the cup down harder than necessary. What were you thinking? You're a translator, not a field operative. You had no training, no backup, no business walking into that situation alone. Someone had to. And you couldn't. You were too important to risk on reconnaissance. Ivy met his eyes. I did what needed to be done. What you taught me to do. Find the advantage. Take the opportunity. Make the hard call. I didn't teach you to throw yourself in front of bullets. You taught me that some things are worth the risk. That was one of them. Adrian looked away, jaw working. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. Luca wants to meet you. He's been asking every day. Says he wants to thank the lady who saved him. I'd like that. His mother doesn't know the details. She thinks you're an employee who happened to be at the right place. Let's keep it that way. Of course. And Ivy? Adrian turned back to her. What you did, throwing yourself between him and that gun, that wasn't strategy. That wasn't calculation. That was something else. What was it? I'm still trying to figure that out. He stood, walked to the window. Outside, Chicago sprawled in afternoon sunlight. The Rossi family has gone to ground. They know we're coming for them. Marcus disappeared the day after the kidnapping. We're still tracking him down. Will you kill them? Eventually. Adrian said it matter-of-factly, like discussing dinner plans. But not immediately. First, I need to understand the full scope of who was involved. Who financed it? Who gave the orders? Then I'll respond appropriately. Appropriately meaning? Meaning in a way that ensures no one ever tries this again. He turned from the window. You should rest. The doctors want to keep you another few days for observation. I've arranged for round-the-clock security. No one gets in this room without clearance. You don't have to do that. Yes, I do. You're under my protection now, permanently. Adrian moved toward the door, then paused. There's something else. Word is spread about what you did. My people, the other organizations, everyone knows a translator walked into a hostile situation unarmed and got my son out alive. That's changed how they see you, how they see your value. Is that good or bad? It's complicated. You're no longer invisible, Ivy. You're known now. That brings respect. But it also brings danger. His expression was unreadable. Welcome to the price of mattering. He left. Ivy lay there listening to the heart monitor's steady rhythm, processing everything he'd said and everything he hadn't. She'd crossed another line, from employee to something else. Someone who'd bled for Adrian's organization. Someone who'd proven loyalty not with words but with action. She should have been terrified. Instead, she felt strangely calm. This was who she was now. This was the life she'd chosen when she'd spoken Russian in that penthouse 4 months ago. The door opened again. This time it was Dmitri carrying a manila folder. You're awake. Good. He set the folder on her bedside table. From Mr. Volkov. Information on your attackers. He thought you'd want to know who shot you. Ivy opened the folder with her good hand. Inside were photographs, dossiers, surveillance reports. The 2 men who'd guarded Luca were identified as low-level Rossi soldiers, both dead now, killed in the warehouse by Adrian's team. But there was more. This one, Dmitri tapped a photo of an older man, is Carlo Rossi, head of the family. He ordered the kidnapping, and this, another photo, is the man who coordinated with Marcus. We're still looking for both of them. How long will it take to find them? Days, maybe weeks. They've gone underground, called in favors, but we'll find them. We always do. Dmitri studied her. You know what happens when we do, yes? I can guess. Can you live with it, knowing your actions led to their deaths? Ivy thought about Luca crying in that warehouse, about the gun aimed at an 8-year-old child, about the choice she'd made to step between. Yes, she said simply. I can live with it. Dmitri nodded, satisfied. Good, because there's no going back now. You're one of us, for better or worse. 3 days later, Ivy was discharged with painkillers, strict instructions about physical therapy, and a shoulder that screamed every time she moved wrong. Adrian sent a car to take her home, except the driver didn't take her to her apartment. He drove to the Meridian Tower instead. Wrong address, Ivy said. No, ma'am. Mr. Volkov asked that you stay in the guest suite until you're fully recovered. He's concerned about security at your apartment. Translation: Adrian didn't trust her building's locks or lack of surveillance. He wanted her where he could protect her, control her. Both, probably. Ivy should have argued, should have insisted on her own space, her own autonomy. Instead, she let herself be escorted to the penthouse's guest suite, a bedroom and bathroom bigger than her entire apartment, decorated in shades of cream and gray that probably cost more per square foot than most people's annual salary. Adrian appeared within minutes of her arrival. You should be resting. I've been resting for 3 days. I'm going stir-crazy. Then rest here where it's safe. The guest suite is yours for as long as you need it. He handed her a key card. Full access to the building. Kitchen is stocked. If you need anything, call Dmitri. This is too much. It's adequate security for someone who saved my son's life. Adrian's voice held no room for argument. Consider it non-negotiable. Ivy settled into the guest suite with the strange feeling of living in a museum. Everything was beautiful, expensive, and somehow impersonal. She spent the first 2 days sleeping, reading, and doing the gentle exercises the physical therapist had prescribed. On the 3rd day, she ventured into the main living area and found Luca there. He sat at the dining table with homework spread everywhere, a small dark-haired boy with his father's gray eyes and a serious expression that seemed too old for 8 years. You're Ivy, he said without preamble. That's me. You must be Luca. Thank you for saving me. He said it formally, like he'd been practicing. My dad says you were very brave. I just did what needed to be done. You got shot. Luca's eyes went to her bandaged shoulder. Did it hurt a lot? Yeah, it did. Still does sometimes. I was really scared. In that warehouse. I thought they might kill me. His voice went small. But then you came and you told them you were taking me, and I knew it would be okay. Ivy's throat tightened. She sat down beside him, careful of her shoulder. You were very brave too, you know. You didn't panic. You stayed calm. That helped a lot. My dad says staying calm is important. That fear makes you stupid. Luca looked at his homework. I'm supposed to write an essay about someone I admire. Can I write about you? I think you should write about your dad. I already did that last year. Besides, he says what you did was... Luca searched for the word. Exceptional. That means really, really good, right? It means rare, special. Ivy smiled despite herself. But your dad is exceptional too. He loves you very much. You know that, right? Yeah, he tries to hide it sometimes because of work. But I know. Luca went back to his homework. You can stay here if you want, while your shoulder gets better. It's nice having someone else around. It gets kind of lonely when it's just Dad and his meetings. Adrian appeared in the doorway, having arrived silently enough that neither of them noticed. He watched the exchange with an expression Ivy couldn't quite read. Luca, your mother's downstairs. Time to go. Already? But I just got here. Luca gathered his homework with visible reluctance. Will Ivy still be here next time? That's up to Ivy. Luca turned to her hopefully. She found herself nodding before she'd consciously decided to. I'll be here. Cool. He grabbed his backpack, started for the door, then turned back. I'm really glad you're okay, Ivy. I would have been sad if you died saving me. Then he was gone, leaving Ivy and Adrian alone in the too quiet penthouse. He likes you, Adrian observed. He's a good kid. He is. Despite everything, despite this life, I'm trying to keep him that way. Adrian moved to the window, his usual spot for difficult conversations. You didn't have to promise to be here next time. I wanted to. He's easy to talk to, honest in a way adults aren't. That's childhood. It doesn't last. Adrian's voice carried old pain. Eventually he'll learn to hide things, to calculate. To protect himself by not showing what he really feels. That's what this world teaches you. Is that what it taught you? Among other things, he turned to face her. There's been a development. We found Marcus. Ivy's pulse quickened. Where? Milwaukee. Hiding with some associates he thinks I don't know about. I'm sending a team tonight to collect him. And then? And then we have a conversation about consequences. About what happens when you help kidnap a child to settle a business dispute. Adrian's voice went cold. He'll tell us everything about the Rossi family's involvement, and then he'll disappear. You're going to kill him. I'm going to remove a problem. There's a difference. No, there isn't. Not really. Ivy stood carefully, her shoulder protesting. I'm not judging. I'm trying to understand where the line is. What's justified and what's just revenge. There is no line. That's what you need to understand. Adrian crossed to her, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. In this world, there's only survival and elimination. Marcus chose elimination when he helped take my son. Now he faces the consequences. That's not revenge. That's cause and effect. And the Rossis? They're next. Carlo and his lieutenants. Anyone who knew about the plan and didn't stop it. I'm going to dismantle their organization piece by piece until there's nothing left. He paused. This bothers you. I threw myself in front of a bullet for Luca. I'm not squeamish about protecting him. Ivy struggled to articulate it. I need to know where this ends. How much blood is enough? It ends when the message is sent. When every organization in Chicago understands that touching my family means total destruction, not just death, erasure. Adrian's eyes held hers. You want to know if I'm a good man, Ivy? I'm not. I never have been. I'm a man who protects what's his through whatever means necessary. If that troubles you, you should leave now. I'm not leaving. Then accept what that means. Accept what I am and what you're choosing to be part of. Ivy thought about Luca's essay question, about admiration and exception, and the complicated truth that sometimes good people did terrible things, and terrible people did good things, and the world was infinitely more complex than foster care had prepared her for. I accept it, she said quietly. All of it. Something shifted in Adrian's expression. Not quite approval, but close. Good, because I have a job for you. Tomorrow night, important meeting with some Japanese contacts. I need you to observe, translate if necessary, and tell me what you see that I might miss. My shoulder. You'll be sitting, observing, not fighting. He moved away back to his comfortable distance. Consider it light duty while you heal, but I need your eyes on this one. Something about the deal feels wrong, and I can't identify what. Tell me about it. They spent the next hour going over details. The Japanese contact was a businessman named Takeshi Yamamoto, representing interests that wanted to move merchandise through Adrian's distribution network. The terms seemed fair, the payment was generous, but Adrian's instinct said something was off. What kind of merchandise? Ivy asked. Electronics. High-end components. Allegedly legitimate, but the margins are too good for fully legal goods. Stolen? Probably. But that's not what bothers me. I've moved stolen electronics before. This feels different. The Yamamoto's too eager, too willing to accept my terms without negotiation. Ivy understood immediately. In her months with Adrian, she'd learned that everyone negotiated. Always. Someone who didn't was either desperate or lying. You think it's a setup? I think it's something. What? I don't know yet. That's why I need you there. You read people well. You see details. You might catch what I miss. Or I might miss everything because I'm recovering from a gunshot wound and operating on painkillers. You'll be fine. You work better under pressure anyway. Adrian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned. The team's in position in Milwaukee. I need to coordinate the Marcus extraction. We'll continue this tomorrow. He left. Ivy returned to the guest suite and tried to sleep, but her mind raced with questions she couldn't answer and fears she couldn't articulate. She'd crossed so many lines in the past 4 months, helped destroy Marcus's reputation, identified Lisa Chen as a weakness to exploit, walked into a hostile situation armed with nothing but lies and desperation. And she'd do it all again. That was the thing that should have terrified her. She'd become someone who made cost-benefit analyses about human lives, who saw violence as a tool rather than a tragedy, who accepted that some people needed to disappear to protect others. She'd become exactly what Adrian needed her to be. The next morning brought news. Marcus was in custody, being held at a secure location, and singing like a canary about the Rossi family's involvement. The kidnapping had been Carlo Rossi's idea, payment for Marcus's information about Adrian's schedule and vulnerabilities. The goal had been ransom initially, with murder as a backup if Adrian didn't comply. They were going to kill him regardless, Victor told her over breakfast in the penthouse's kitchen. Carlo wanted to send a message about territory disputes. Dead kids send strong messages. Ivy's coffee suddenly tasted like acid. That's evil? Yes, but strategic from their perspective. Fear is a powerful tool. Victor studied her. You're still adjusting to how this world works. That's good. The day you stop being shocked by the darkness is the day you should worry about your soul. Do you worry about yours? Every day. But I've been doing this for 15 years. You've been doing it for 4 months. You still have time to leave if you want. Does anyone ever leave? Sometimes, usually horizontally. Victor's smile was bleak. But Adrian's different. If you genuinely wanted out, if you asked him, he'd let you go. With conditions and safeguards, but he'd allow it. He's not a monster despite what people think. What is he then? A father who'll do anything to protect his child. Everything else is just tactics, strategy, the machinery that makes protection possible. Victor poured more coffee. You understand that, I think. That's why you work well together. You both know what matters and what's just noise. The meeting with Yamamoto was set for 8 that evening in a private room at a Japanese restaurant in River North. Ivy dressed carefully in dark slacks and a silk blouse that accommodated her bandaged shoulder. She looked professional, competent, unremarkable. Exactly what Adrian needed. Dmitri drove them, his usual stoic presence somehow comforting. In the back seat, Adrian reviewed files on his tablet while Ivy watched Chicago slide past the windows. Yamamoto will have at least 2 associates with him, Adrian said without looking up. One is his translator, a woman named Keiko. The other is Muscle, probably armed, standard business meeting security. What do you want me to focus on? Everything, but especially the translator. Watch how she interacts with Yamamoto. Whether she's translating accurately or filtering information. Whether she seems nervous or confident. You think she might be lying? I think everyone lies in these situations. The question is what they're lying about and why. Adrian set the tablet aside. Remember, you're there as my translator and advisor. You have authority to speak on my behalf if necessary. Don't hesitate to use it. They arrived at the restaurant to find Yamamoto already waiting, a man in his 50s with silver-touched hair and an expensive suit, flanked by a young woman in business attire and a larger man whose jacket didn't quite hide his shoulder holster. Introductions were made in Japanese and English. Ivy bowed appropriately, noting how Keiko's eyes widened slightly when she realized Adrian had brought his own translator. That was interesting. Did Yamamoto not expect Adrian to understand Japanese? Or was Keiko surprised by something else? They settled around the table. Tea was poured. Appetizers appeared. And then, business. I appreciate you meeting with me, Mr. Volkov, Yamamoto began in English. I've heard excellent things about your distribution network. I've built something efficient, yes, but I'm selective about partnerships. Tell me about your merchandise. Yamamoto launched into an explanation about high-end electronics components, processors, memory chips, specialized hardware, all legitimate sounding. But Ivy noticed how Keiko tensed whenever Yamamoto mentioned specific technical details. She was filtering, Ivy realized, changing the translation subtly. What kind of volume are we discussing? Adrian asked. Initially, perhaps 10 containers monthly, scaling to 20 within 6 months if the partnership works well. Adrian named a price per container. Yamamoto accepted without negotiation. There it was. The red flag Adrian had sensed. No one accepted the first price, ever. That seems very reasonable, Yamamoto said. Shall we discuss the timeline? Ivy interrupted in Japanese. Excuse me, Yamamoto-san. I'm curious about the origin of these components. You mentioned they're manufactured in Taiwan? Yamamoto's smile froze. Keiko went pale. Yes, Taiwan. Why do you ask? Because Taiwanese electronics exports require specific certifications for U.S. import. I want to ensure we have the proper documentation to avoid customs complications. Ivy kept her voice pleasant, professional, just asking reasonable questions. Of course, all documentation will be provided. Excellent. And the end buyers, they're aware these are refurbished components rather than new? Silence. Yamamoto exchanged a glance with Keiko. The muscle's hand drifted toward his jacket. I didn't mention refurbished, Yamamoto said carefully. No, but Keiko did. Just now, in Japanese, when she told you to be careful about revealing too much. Ivy smiled. I speak Japanese, Yamamoto-san. I've understood every word of your private conversation. Adrian leaned back, watching this unfold with the air of someone enjoying a show. He'd known. Somehow, he'd known Ivy would catch something. Perhaps we should speak plainly, Yamamoto said, switching fully to Japanese. The components are stolen. Military grade. Taken from a U.S. facility by associates who need them moved through civilian channels. The buyers are overseas defense contractors who can't acquire them through legal means. And you approached Mr. Volkov because? Because his reputation suggests he's willing to move questionable merchandise for the right price. Ivy translated this for Adrian, who listened without expression. Then he spoke, and Ivy translated back into Japanese. I move questionable merchandise, yes, but I don't move anything that brings federal attention. Stolen military electronics? That's not a customs problem. That's a Department of Defense problem. FBI, Homeland Security. The kind of investigation that doesn't stop until everyone involved is in prison or dead. The compensation would be substantial. I don't care if you're offering me the moon. The answer is no. Adrian stood. This meeting is over, Mr. Yamamoto. I suggest you find someone else for your suicide mission. Wait. Yamamoto stood too, desperation cracking through his careful facade. If it's not the electronics, perhaps we could discuss other arrangements. I have access to... No. Adrian's voice could have cut diamond. I think you should leave Chicago, Mr. Yamamoto. Tonight, preferably. Because if you're working with stolen military hardware, there are people who will be very interested in your activities. And I'd hate for my restaurant to be raided because you were here. The threat was clear. Talk to the wrong people about this meeting, and Adrian would make sure the authorities knew exactly where to find Yamamoto and his stolen goods. They left the restaurant in tense silence. Only when they were safely in the car, Dmitri driving them away from River North, did Adrian speak. How did you know they were stolen military components? I didn't. Not for certain. Ivy's hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. But Keiko made a mistake. She used the term military grade in Japanese when talking to Yamamoto privately. That's a very specific classification. And the way Yamamoto got desperate when you started to leave, that suggested he needed this deal badly enough to reveal the truth. And you made the connection in real time. Impressive. Adrian looked pleased. This is why you're valuable, Ivy. You don't just translate words. You translate meaning, intention. You see the game behind the game. I almost got us killed. That security guy looked ready to shoot. But he didn't, because you maintained control of the situation. You stayed calm, asked strategic questions, and gave me the information I needed to make the right decision. Adrian pulled out his phone, typed a message. I'm informing my contacts in federal law enforcement about a potential military theft ring. Anonymously, of course. Let them handle Yamamoto. You have contacts in law enforcement? Everyone has contacts everywhere if they're smart. The FBI enjoys easy arrests. I enjoy not being investigated. We help each other occasionally. He looked at her. This bothers you less than Marcus's situation. Why? Ivy thought about it. Because Yamamoto made his own choices. No one forced him to steal military hardware or try to rope you into moving it. Marcus was reacting to being beaten in business. This is different. This is calculated criminal enterprise. And you find that easier to accept? I find it easier to understand the consequences. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes, as they say. Adrian laughed. Genuine amusement. You're learning the language. Good. That'll serve you well. They drove in comfortable silence for a while. Then Adrian's phone rang. He answered, listened, his expression darkening. When? How many? I see. Handle it. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He ended the call, leaned forward. Dmitri, change of plans. We're going to the warehouse on Ashland. What happened? Ivy asked. The Rossi family happened. They just hit one of my distribution centers, burned it to the ground. 3 of my people are dead. The warehouse was still burning when they arrived, flames painting the night sky orange and red. Fire trucks surrounded the building, firefighters working to contain the blaze. Police cars formed a perimeter. And somewhere in that inferno were 3 people who'd worked for Adrian, who'd trusted his protection, now dead because Carlo Rossi wanted revenge. Adrian stood watching the flames with an expression of pure fury, not hot anger, cold, calculating rage that promised terrible retribution. Get me everything, he told Victor, who'd arrived minutes before them. Every piece of intelligence we have on Rossi locations, every associate, every safe house, every place they might hide. I want targets identified within 24 hours. Adrian, if you retaliate immediately, this becomes open war, Victor warned. Every family in Chicago will have to choose sides. It could destabilize everything. Then they'll choose, and they'll learn what happens when you murder my people. Adrian turned to Dmitri. Call everyone. I want a full meeting tomorrow morning. Every lieutenant, every crew leader. I'm making a statement. Ivy watched him organize retribution with the precision of a military general. This was Adrian at his most dangerous, not impulsive or emotional, but methodically planning maximum damage. And she understood watching him that there would be blood. A lot of it. The question was whether she could live with being part of the organization that spilled it. She already knew the answer. She'd known it from the moment she'd thrown herself in front of that bullet. She was all in now. Whatever came next, whatever darkness awaited, she'd chosen this path and Adrian's protection and the strange, violent family she'd somehow joined. Ivy, Adrian said, pulling her from her thoughts, I need you at the meeting tomorrow. I want everyone to see you, to understand that the woman who saved my son is part of my inner circle now. Why does that matter? Because symbols matter, loyalty matters, and you've become a symbol of both. He looked at the burning warehouse. This is war now. The Rossis have made sure of that, and I need everyone in my organization absolutely clear about where we stand and who stands with us. I'll be there. Good. Adrian turned away from the flames. Let's go. There's nothing more to see here except consequences. Tomorrow we plan the response. In the car heading back to the Meridian, Ivy realized she'd stopped shaking. The fear that had gripped her in the restaurant was gone, replaced by something harder, colder. She'd made her choice months ago when she'd spoken Russian instead of running. Every decision since had been a confirmation of that initial leap. She belonged to this world now, belonged to Adrian's organization and its brutal logic of power and survival. And if that made her complicit in whatever came next, so be it. Some prices were worth paying, some places were worth fighting for, even if they existed in the shadows where normal rules didn't apply and violence was just another language everyone spoke. She'd learned to speak it. And tomorrow, she'd help Adrian teach the Rossi family exactly what that language sounded like when wielded by someone who'd already lost everything once and refused to lose anything ever again. The meeting convened at 9 the next morning in a private room at one of Adrian's legitimate restaurants. A place expensive enough that no one would question a business breakfast, discreet enough that conversations stayed private. Ivy arrived with Adrian and Dmitri to find 23 people already assembled. Crew leaders, lieutenants, the core of Adrian's organization gathered in response to last night's attack. They all turned when Adrian entered, and Ivy felt the weight of their attention shift to her. Not hostile, exactly, but evaluating. She was the outsider who'd somehow become an insider, the delivery girl who'd saved the boss's son, an anomaly that needed to be understood and categorized. Adrian moved to the head of the table, and the room fell silent. 3 of our people died last night, he began without preamble. Burned alive in a warehouse fire set by the Rossi family as retaliation for my recovery of my son. Their names were David Chen, Michael Rodriguez, and Patricia Webb. They were loyal. They were competent. They deserved better than to die as pawns in Carlo Rossi's tantrum. He let the silence stretch, let the anger build. This cannot stand, will not stand. The Rossi family has declared war, and we will answer with overwhelming force. But before we discuss tactics, I want everyone in this room to understand something. Adrian gestured to Ivy. Most of you know Ivy Hale. Some of you have worked with her on translations, negotiations, intelligence gathering. All of you know she walked into a hostile situation unarmed and extracted my son while taking a bullet in the process. Every eye in the room focused on Ivy. She kept her expression neutral, back straight despite her shoulders screaming in protest. Ivy is no longer just a contractor or consultant. She's part of my inner circle. She has my complete trust and my full protection. Any threat to her is a threat to me personally. Any disrespect to her is disrespect to me. Is that understood? A murmur of agreement rippled through the room, but Ivy saw the calculation in several faces, the questions. Why her? What made a translator worthy of this position? What had she done to earn it beyond the obvious? One man, Tony Marconi, who ran the Southside Cruise, spoke up. With respect, boss, we're about to go to war. War requires soldiers, not translators. How does she help us win? It was the question everyone was thinking. Ivy appreciated Tony for asking it directly. Adrian smiled thinly. Good question. Ivy, tell them about Yamamoto. Ivy stood, conscious of every gaze tracking her movement. Last night, before the warehouse burned, we met with a Japanese businessman who wanted to use our distribution network to move stolen military electronics. High-value, high-risk merchandise that would have brought federal attention we couldn't afford. I identified the trap before we committed to anything. How? Tony challenged. I speak Japanese. I caught inconsistencies between what his translator was saying in English versus Japanese. I asked strategic questions that forced him to reveal what he was really moving. And I gave Mr. Volkov the information he needed to refuse the deal and warn federal authorities about a potential military theft ring. Ivy met Tony's eyes. War isn't just fought with guns. It's fought with information, intelligence, understanding what your enemies want and how to deny them. That's what I do. She's right, Victor interjected. In the past 4 months, Ivy has recovered $40 million in negotiations, prevented 2 major security breaches, and mapped territory dynamics that led to our successful expansion into Englewood. Her value is proven. Plus, she took a bullet for the boss's kid, Dmitri added quietly. That counts for something in my book. Tony nodded slowly. Fair enough. Just wanted to make sure we weren't playing favorites during a crisis. Favorites get you killed, Adrian said flatly. I promote based on competence and loyalty. Ivy has demonstrated both. Now let's discuss the Rossi problem. The meeting shifted into tactical planning. Targets were identified. Rossi-controlled businesses, safe houses, revenue streams. Adrian's strategy was methodical. Cut off their money, isolate their leadership, make them vulnerable before striking directly. What about Marcus? Someone asked. He's the one who gave Rossi the information to plan the kidnapping. Marcus is handled, Adrian said. He's given us everything he knows about Rossi operations. He's no longer useful. The implication was clear. Marcus would disappear, probably already had. No one looked surprised or particularly troubled. This was the business. Betrayal had consequences. The real target is Carlo Rossi himself, Adrian continued. He ordered the kidnapping, authorized the warehouse attack. Taking out his lieutenant sends a message, but it doesn't end this. We need Carlo. He's gone to ground, one of the lieutenants reported. Our sources say he's holed up in an estate outside the city. Private property, armed security, the works. Getting to him won't be easy. Nothing worthwhile is. Adrian looked around the table. I want surveillance on that estate around the clock. I want to know everyone who comes and goes. I want to know his patterns, his vulnerabilities, his schedule. And when we have enough information, we move. The meeting continued for 2 more hours, covering logistics and contingencies. Ivy took notes, asked occasional questions, and watched how Adrian commanded loyalty through a combination of respect and fear. He listened to his people, incorporated their suggestions, but never let anyone doubt who made final decisions. When the meeting finally ended, people filed out in small groups. Several nodded to Ivy as they passed, acknowledgement of her new position, if not quite acceptance yet. That would come with time. Or it wouldn't. Either way, she'd proven herself enough that Adrian had publicly claimed her as part of his inner circle. There was no going back from that. You did well, Adrian told her when they were alone. Answering Tony directly instead of hiding behind my authority. That earned respect. I just told the truth. The truth is a weapon when used correctly. You're learning how to wield it. Adrian checked his phone, frowned. I need to handle something. Dimitri will take you back to the penthouse. Rest that shoulder. We have a long few weeks ahead. What are you going to do? What needs to be done? He met her eyes. Some things you don't need to be involved in, Ivy. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Trust me on this. She did. That was the strange part. Somewhere in the past 4 months, Ivy had started trusting Adrian Volkov's judgment more than her own instincts. That should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like relief. She'd spent her whole life making decisions alone, relying only on herself. Having someone else she could trust to make the hard calls, that was dangerously seductive. Back at the penthouse, Ivy tried to rest, but her mind wouldn't settle. She kept thinking about Marcus, about where he was and what was happening to him, about the 3 people who'd died in the warehouse fire, about the war that was coming and her role in it. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Ivy Hale? A woman's voice, unfamiliar. Who's asking? Someone who has information you need about Adrian Volkov's son, about another attempt that's being planned. Ivy's blood went cold. What are you talking about? Not on the phone. Meet me at Grant Park, South End, near the Buckingham Fountain. 1 hour. Come alone. How do I know this isn't a trap? You don't. But if you want to keep that child safe, you'll come anyway. The line went dead. Ivy sat staring at her phone, mind racing. This could absolutely be a trap. The Rossi family trying to get to Adrian through her, or someone else with their own agenda. She should call Adrian immediately, tell him about the call, let him handle it. But what if it was real? What if there was another threat to Luca that Adrian didn't know about? What if hesitating cost that little boy his life? Ivy made a decision she knew was probably stupid, but couldn't avoid making. She grabbed her jacket, slipped the gun Dimitri had given her into her purse, and headed for the elevator. Grant Park was crowded with tourists and locals enjoying the late autumn afternoon. Ivy made her way to the south end near Buckingham Fountain, scanning faces for anyone who looked like they were waiting for her. The meeting spot was public enough to offer some protection, but isolated enough for private conversation. A woman in her 30s approached, professional clothing, nervous energy, constantly checking her surroundings. Ivy Hale? That's me. I'm Rachel Volkov, Adrian's ex-wife, Luca's mother. Everything inside Ivy went still. She'd never met Rachel, never even seen a photograph. Adrian kept his family completely separate from his business life. The fact that Rachel was here, making contact, violated every protocol Adrian had established. Does Adrian know you're meeting me? No, and he can't know. If he finds out, Rachel looked genuinely frightened. Look, I don't know you. I only know what Luca's told me about the lady who saved him. But I need help, and I have nowhere else to turn. Help with what? 2 days ago, someone approached me, a man I didn't recognize. He said if I wanted to keep Luca safe, I needed to convince Adrian to back off the Rossi family. That if Adrian continues his retaliation, they'll come after Luca again. And this time, her voice broke. This time they'll make sure there's no rescue. Ivy's hand instinctively moved toward her purse where the gun waited. Did you tell Adrian? I can't. He's already in war mode. If I tell him about this threat, he'll go even harder after the Rossis. More people will die, and Luca will be in even more danger. Rachel grabbed Ivy's arm. You have influence with Adrian. Luca told me how much his father respects you. Maybe you can convince him to find another way, to negotiate instead of escalate. Adrian doesn't negotiate with people who threaten his son. Then what am I supposed to do? Just wait for them to kill my child? Tears streamed down Rachel's face now. I left Adrian because I couldn't live in his world anymore. The danger, the violence, the constant fear. I thought getting divorced, taking Luca away from that life would keep him safe. But it didn't work. They still came for him. And now you want me to convince Adrian to show weakness to people who've already proven they'll murder children? Ivy pulled her arm free. That won't work, Rachel. Backing down won't make Luca safer. It'll just prove that threatening him is an effective strategy. More people will do it. Then what's the answer? Let Adrian burn Chicago to the ground? The answer is eliminating the threat permanently, which is exactly what Adrian's planning. Ivy softened her voice slightly. I understand you're scared. I would be too, but asking Adrian to stop now won't protect Luca. It'll just prolong the danger. Rachel wiped her eyes, pulling herself together. You really believe that? That more violence is the solution? I believe Adrian knows how to protect what matters to him, and I believe the Rossi family made a catastrophic mistake when they touched his son. This ends one way, with them gone or us gone. Adrian's making sure it's them. And how many people die before that happens? However many it takes. Ivy met Rachel's eyes. I'm sorry that's not the answer you wanted, but it's the truth. Luca thinks you're wonderful, you know. He wrote his essay about you, about bravery and sacrifice. Rachel's expression was complicated, gratitude and resentment and fear all mixed together. I should hate you. You're everything I tried to get away from, but my son is alive because of you. So instead I'm here, begging you to help me protect him. I am helping protect him, by supporting Adrian's response. Is that what you call it? Support? Rachel laughed bitterly. You're enabling him, giving him permission to do terrible things because you've convinced yourself it's necessary. Maybe. Or maybe I understand this world better than you ever did. Ivy felt anger rising. You left Adrian because you couldn't handle the reality of what he does. That's fine. That's your choice. But don't come to me asking for some fantasy solution where everyone stays safe and no one gets hurt. That option doesn't exist. It never did. So I should just accept that my son lives with a target on his back? You should accept that Adrian is doing everything possible to remove that target, permanently. Ivy pulled out her phone. I'm calling him. He needs to know about this threat. No, Rachel tried to grab the phone. You can't. If he knows someone approached me, he'll respond appropriately, which is exactly what needs to happen. Ivy stepped back, already dialing. Go home, Rachel. Stay with Luca. Let Adrian handle this. Rachel stood there for a moment, defeated. Then she turned and walked away, shoulders hunched against more than just the autumn wind. Adrian answered on the second ring. Ivy, what's wrong? I just met with your ex-wife. Someone from the Rossi family approached her, threatened Luca again if you don't back off. Ivy recounted the conversation quickly, efficiently. She wanted me to convince you to negotiate instead of retaliate. Silence on the other end. Then quietly, where are you? Grant Park, South End. Stay there. I'm coming to you. He arrived 15 minutes later with Dimitri and 2 other guards. His expression was controlled fury as he listened to Ivy repeat everything Rachel had said, every detail of the threat. She shouldn't have contacted you, he said when Ivy finished. That put you at risk. What if it had been a setup? What if the Rossis were using her to draw you out? I considered that. I came armed and stayed in a public space. You should have called me immediately. Probably, but I wanted to hear what she had to say first, to evaluate whether the threat was real. And? It's real. They're desperate. The warehouse attack was meant to make you back off. When that didn't work, they went after your biggest vulnerability again. Ivy met his eyes. They're not going to stop, Adrian. Not until either they're eliminated or you are. I know. Adrian looked at the fountain, water dancing in the afternoon light. Rachel never understood. She thought if we just stayed quiet, stayed small, we could be safe. But that's not how this works. Showing weakness doesn't protect you. It paints a target. She's scared for Luca. So am I. Every minute of every day. The admission came hard. But fear doesn't change the equation. The Rossis threatened my son, kidnapped him, tried to kill him. Now they're threatening him again. The only response that makes sense is total elimination. What about Rachel? If they approached her once, I'll have her and Luca move to a secure location, protected until this is over. Adrian pulled out his phone, made several calls in rapid succession. By the time he was done, Rachel and Luca would be in a safe house with round-the-clock security. Thank you for calling me, for not trying to handle this alone. I considered it, but you needed to know. The fact that you considered it is concerning. Adrian turned to face her fully. You're not a field operative, Ivy. You're not trained for extractions or tactical situations. What you did at the warehouse, that was brave and necessary. But it was also incredibly dangerous and you nearly died. Don't make a habit of putting yourself in harm's way. You put yourself in harm's way all the time. That's different. This is my world, my war. You're... He stopped, searching for words. I'm what? You're supposed to stay safe. You're supposed to be the one part of this organization that doesn't get destroyed by the violence. Adrian's voice went quiet. I have very few things I want to protect, Ivy. My son, my organization, and now you. Don't make that harder than it has to be. The admission hung between them, weighted with implications Ivy wasn't ready to examine. She'd become more than just an asset, more than just a useful employee. Somewhere in the past 4 months, she'd become something Adrian cared about protecting. That should have scared her. Instead, it felt like coming home. I'll be more careful, she promised. See that you are. Adrian's phone buzzed with incoming messages. Rachel and Luca are secure. The estate surveillance is yielding results. We've identified a pattern in Carlo's movements. He leaves the property every Tuesday afternoon for exactly 2 hours. Where does he go? His mother's grave. Never misses it. Even in hiding, even with enemies hunting him, he goes every Tuesday like clockwork. Adrian's smile was sharp. Sentiment makes you predictable. Predictability gets you killed. When do you move? This Tuesday, 4 days from now. We'll have one chance to get this right. He looked at Ivy. I need you to do something for me. I need you to reach out to your contact network, the drivers, the restaurant workers, everyone you've cultivated over the months. I need to know if the Rossis have any contingency plans, any backup safe houses or escape routes we haven't identified. You want me doing intelligence gathering? My shoulder's barely healed. You'll be making phone calls and meeting with informants in public spaces, low risk, high value. Adrian's expression softened slightly. I know you're still recovering, but this is what you're best at, and I need the best right now. Ivy spent the next 3 days working her network harder than she ever had. She talked to delivery drivers who'd noticed unusual security at certain locations, restaurant staff who'd overheard conversations, store owners who'd seen Rossi associates buying supplies. Piece by piece, she assembled a picture of the Rossi family's contingency planning. They had 3 backup locations, 2 in Chicago, 1 across the state line in Indiana, all fortified, all stocked for extended stays. Carlo was paranoid enough to have planned for the possibility of extended siege, but he wasn't paranoid enough to skip visiting his mother's grave. This is excellent work, Adrian told her when she delivered the report. With this information, we can cut off every escape route before we move. They'll have nowhere to run. What happens after? When Carlo's gone and the Rossi family is destroyed. Then we rebuild, absorb their territory, their operations, their revenue streams, consolidate power so no one else gets ideas about challenging us. Adrian studied her. This bothers you. I keep thinking about the people who'll die, not Carlo or his lieutenants, the low-level associates who just work for them, the families who depend on that income, all the collateral damage. There's always collateral damage. That's the nature of war. Adrian's voice wasn't unkind, but it was firm. I can't save everyone, Ivy. I can only protect my own and eliminate threats. Everything else is just noise. That's cold. That's survival. You of all people should understand that. He paused. You grew up in foster care. You survived by making hard choices, by prioritizing your own survival over connection or sentiment. This is the same thing, just on a larger scale. He was right. Ivy had spent years making cold calculations about who to trust and who to avoid, which foster homes were safe enough to tolerate and which needed immediate escape plans. She'd learned early that sentiment got you hurt, that the only person you could rely on was yourself. Somewhere along the way, she'd forgotten those lessons. Let herself start caring about people beyond strategic value, about Luca's safety and Adrian's rare moments of vulnerability and the strange family she'd found in this criminal organization. That caring made her weak, made her question decisions that should have been simple. You're right, she said quietly. I know you're right. I wish there was another way. There isn't. There never is. Adrian moved to the window, his familiar spot for difficult conversations. Tuesday we end this. Then we deal with the aftermath. Until then, stay close. Stay safe. Don't make any moves without clearing them with Dmitri or me first. Understood. She left him there, silhouetted against Chicago's skyline, and returned to the guest suite that had become her temporary home. Her shoulder ached despite the painkillers. Her mind raced with scenarios and contingencies. And somewhere under all of it, fear pulsed like a second heartbeat. Tuesday would bring violence. Death. The end of the Rossi family and anyone who'd stood with them. And Ivy would be complicit in all of it, her intelligence making the operation possible. She'd crossed so many lines already. What was one more? Tuesday morning arrived cold and gray, November asserting itself with frost and wind that cut through clothing. Ivy woke early, dressed in dark colors, and found Adrian already awake and planning. It's happening in 4 hours, he told her. Carlo leaves his estate at 1:30, arrives at the cemetery at 2. We'll have teams positioned at every exit point. Once he's inside the cemetery, we move. How many people are you sending? 12. Enough to handle his security and any surprises. Dimitri's leading the operation. What about you? I'll be here coordinating. This isn't the kind of thing I get directly involved in anymore. Adrian looked tired, older than his years. Used to be I'd lead operations like this personally, but that was before Luca. Before I had something to lose that mattered more than proving I could still handle field work. You trust Dimitri to do it right? With my life. With Luca's life. He's the only person I trust that completely. Adrian paused. Except maybe you. The admission caught Ivy off guard. I've only been here 4 months. And in that time, you've proven yourself more reliable than people I've worked with for years. You don't lie to me. You don't try to manipulate me for personal gain. You do the work, and you do it well. He smiled slightly. That's rarer than you'd think in this business. I don't know how to do anything else. Manipulation, politics, I never learned those skills. Just hard work and observation. Those are the skills that matter. Adrian's phone buzzed. Teams are moving into position? This is it. The next 4 hours crawled by with agonizing slowness. Ivy tried to read, to watch television, to do anything that would distract from the clock ticking toward 2 o'clock. Adrian worked at his laptop, reviewing reports and coordinating logistics, his expression locked in concentration. At 1:45, his phone rang. Talk to me, he answered, listened. His expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted. Understood. Proceed as planned. He hung up, looked at Ivy. Carlo just entered the cemetery. Our people are moving in now. Silence. The kind of silence that fills the space where violence happens out of sight. Ivy imagined it, the approach, the confrontation, the gunfire that would end Carlo Rossi's life and his organization's threat. She tried to feel something about it. Satisfaction or guilt or anything. Instead, she just felt numb. Another call came. Adrian listened longer this time. Then he smiled, sharp and satisfied. It's done. Carlo's dead. 3 of his bodyguards too. Our people are clearing the scene now. No casualties on our side. Just like that? Just like that. Adrian poured himself a drink, offered one to Ivy. She accepted. The Rossi family is effectively destroyed. Their leadership is dead, their operations in chaos. Within 24 hours, we'll have absorbed everything worth taking and eliminated everyone who might seek revenge. What about their families, the people who depended on them? They'll find new employment or they won't. That's not my concern. Adrian sipped his drink. I know you want me to be more compassionate about this, but compassion in this business gets you killed. Carlo learned that the hard way. Ivy drank, the whiskey burning down her throat. She'd helped make this happen. Her intelligence, her network, her work had enabled the destruction of an entire criminal organization. And she felt nothing. No triumph. No remorse. Just the hollow certainty that this was who she'd become. Someone who helped powerful men kill their enemies and called it survival. You did good work, Adrian told her. This victory is partly yours. I don't want credit for people dying. Then don't think of it as people dying. Think of it as Luca being safe, as our organization being secure, as justice for the 3 people who burned in that warehouse. He set his glass down. Context matters, Ivy. Frame it the right way, and anything becomes acceptable. Was that what she'd been doing? framing violence as protection, murder as justice, her complicity as survival? Ivy didn't know anymore. The lines had blurred so completely she couldn't tell where legitimate security ended and simple revenge began. But it was done now. The Rossi family was destroyed. Marcus was gone. The threats to Luca were eliminated, and Ivy stood in Adrian's penthouse drinking expensive whiskey while trying not to calculate the body count her work had enabled. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we consolidate. Now we make sure everyone in Chicago understands what happens when they threaten us. Now we rebuild stronger than before." Adrian looked at her seriously. "And now you decide whether you want to keep doing this work or walk away. I meant what I said. You've earned the right to leave if you want. I'll make sure you're protected, financially secure, set up for whatever life you choose." It was the first time he'd offered her an exit since that very first night. The first time he'd acknowledged that she might want something different than what she'd become. Ivy thought about it, really thought about it. Going back to delivering food, going back to poverty and anonymity and a life where she didn't matter. Or staying here in this dangerous world where she had value and purpose and something that felt almost like family. "I'm staying," she said. "You're sure?" "I'm sure. This is where I belong now. For better or worse." Adrian nodded slowly. "Then welcome home, Ivy Hale. Welcome to the family." And despite everything, despite the violence and the moral compromises and the darkness she'd accepted as normal, those words felt like the truest thing anyone had ever said to her. She was home. Finally, impossibly, she was home. The consolidation happened faster than Ivy expected. Within a week, Adrian's organization had absorbed the Rossi family's most profitable operations: 3 restaurants, 2 shipping routes, and a network of contacts that expanded their reach into markets they'd never accessed before. The remaining Rossi associates either pledged loyalty to Adrian or quietly disappeared from Chicago entirely, understanding that staying meant accepting new management or facing permanent retirement. Ivy watched it unfold from her position in Adrian's inner circle, no longer surprised by how efficiently violence could reshape the criminal landscape. What had been a war threatening to destabilize the entire city had ended with surgical precision. Carlo Rossi was dead. His organization was dismantled, and Adrian Volkov's reputation had grown from formidable to untouchable. But 3 weeks after Carlo's death, a new problem emerged. Ivy was working through translation documents in the penthouse when Victor burst in looking genuinely rattled, rare for a man who'd survived 15 years in Adrian's world. "We have a situation," he said. "Big one." Adrian looked up from his laptop. "Define big." "The Koreans. They're saying we owe them money for the Rossi territories, claiming they had a prior agreement with Carlo about revenue sharing in those areas." "That's ridiculous. Carlo never mentioned Korean partnerships in any of the intelligence we gathered." "I know, but they're insisting, and they've brought proof. Contracts, payment schedules, documentation that looks legitimate." Victor pulled out his tablet, showed Adrian images of the documents. "They're demanding either payment or return of the territories, and they're not asking politely." Adrian studied the documents, his expression darkening. "This is a shakedown. They're using the chaos after Carlo's death to fabricate claims and extort money." "Maybe, but their documentation is sophisticated. If we refuse and they take this to the other families, it could make us look like we're not honoring legitimate agreements. That damages our credibility." "Show me everything." Adrian gestured for the tablet. Then he looked at Ivy. "I need your eyes on this. Tell me if these documents are real or fabricated." Ivy spent the next 2 hours examining every page, every signature, every date, in detail. The contracts were in Korean with English translations, claiming that Carlo Rossi had agreed to share 20% of revenue from 3 specific territories with a Korean organization in exchange for their neutrality during his conflicts with other families. The problem was the documents were perfect, too perfect. "These are forgeries," Ivy said finally. "Excellent forgeries, but forgeries nonetheless." "How do you know?" Adrian asked. "Because the terminology is wrong. Look at this clause here. It references a Chicago City ordinance that didn't exist when this contract is dated. The ordinance was only passed 8 months ago. This contract is supposedly 18 months old." She pulled up another document. And this payment schedule references account numbers that don't match the Korean banking system's format. Whoever created these did beautiful work on the language and formatting, but they didn't catch the technical details. Victor looked impressed. That's the second time you've caught document fraud by noticing details no one else would see. It's what I'm good at. Details. Ivy looked at Adrian. The question is, do the Koreans know these are forgeries? Or did someone sell them fake documentation to justify a claim? Good question. Adrian pulled out his phone. I'm going to find out. Set up a meeting with their leadership. I want to handle this before it becomes a larger problem. The meeting was scheduled for 2 days later at a neutral location, a private dining room in a hotel that catered to business travelers who valued discretion. Adrian brought Dmitri, Victor, and Ivy. The Korean delegation arrived with 4 people, including their leader, a man named Jin Park, who radiated quiet authority. Pleasantries were exchanged in Korean and English. Tea was served, and then Jin Park got to business. Mr. Volkov, I appreciate you agreeing to meet. This situation with the Rossi territories is unfortunate, but I believe we can resolve it amicably. I agree, Adrian said. But first, I need to understand the basis of your claim. You say you had an agreement with Carlo Rossi. Yes. Revenue sharing in exchange for our neutrality during his various conflicts. The agreement was mutually beneficial. Jin Park slid copies of the contracts across the table. As you can see, everything is documented. Adrian didn't look at the documents. He looked at Ivy instead. My associate has reviewed these contracts. Perhaps she should share her findings. Ivy took a breath, acutely aware that she was about to call a powerful criminal organization liars to their faces. These contracts are forgeries. Well-executed forgeries, but fraudulent nonetheless. Jin Park's expression didn't change, but his associates tensed. That's a serious accusation. It's a factual observation. Ivy pulled out her tablet, displayed the evidence she'd found. This clause references a city ordinance that didn't exist when the contract was dated. This account number doesn't match Korean banking formats. And this signature, she zoomed in. The pressure points are wrong. This was signed with someone's left hand trying to mimic a right-handed signature, probably traced from an authentic example. Jin Park studied the evidence, his expression unreadable. Then he turned to one of his associates and spoke in rapid Korean. Who verified these documents? Chen did, sir. He said they came from a reliable source. What source? A former Rossi associate who claimed to have handled Carlo's external agreements. Jin Park's eyes narrowed. Find Chen. Bring him to me. Now! The associate left immediately. Jin Park turned back to Adrian, and for the first time, Ivy saw genuine anger beneath his controlled exterior. It appears we've been deceived, Mr. Volkov. Someone sold us fraudulent documentation to create conflict between our organizations. The question is who and why, Adrian said calmly. Who benefits from us fighting each other? The other Chicago families. If we're at war, we're not paying attention to them expanding their operations. Jin Park looked disgusted. This is sophisticated. Whoever planned this understood both our organizations well enough to know exactly how to manipulate us. Do you have a name? This former Rossi associate who provided the documents? Michael Castellano. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Ivy's mind raced. Castellano. Marcus Castellano's brother. Marcus had a brother? She asked quietly. A younger brother. Less ambitious, but apparently more cunning. Adrian's voice was ice. This is revenge. Marcus disappeared after giving us information on the Rossis. Michael must have assumed we killed him, which we did, and decided to avenge him by creating conflict between us and the Koreans. Where's Michael now? Jin Park asked. I don't know, but I'm going to find out. Adrian looked at Jin Park directly. I apologize for this situation. My organization's conflict with the Castellanos has created problems for you. That was never my intention. Nor was creating problems for you mine. Jin Park gestured to the fraudulent documents. These are worthless. I have no legitimate claim to Rossi territories. The question is how we handle the person responsible for this deception. Together, Adrian said immediately. Michael Castellano tried to pit us against each other. I suggest we demonstrate the consequences of that strategy, jointly. Jin Park smiled, sharp and satisfied. I like this idea. A message to anyone else who thinks to manipulate us. The meeting shifted from confrontation to collaboration. By the time it ended, Adrian and Jin Park had agreed to share intelligence, coordinate the search for Michael Castellano, and split whatever assets they recovered from him as compensation for the trouble he'd caused. In the car heading back to the Meridian, Victor was impressed. "You just turned a potential war into an alliance. That's masterful." "I turned fraudulent contracts into an opportunity because Ivy caught details no one else would notice." Adrian looked at her. "Again, you just prevented another major conflict through observation and analysis. I just noticed inconsistencies. You noticed things that saved lives and money and reputation. Don't diminish that." Adrian's phone buzzed with an incoming message. He read it, his expression hardening. Jin Park's people found Chen. He confessed that Michael Castellano paid him $50,000 to deliver the fraudulent documents and convinced Jin Park they were legitimate. Chen's being handled. Ivy understood what handled meant. She didn't ask for details. "What about Michael?" she asked instead. "We're working on it. He's gone to ground, but he'll surface eventually. They always do." Adrian looked out the window at Chicago passing by. "This is what happens when you leave loose ends. Marcus should have been handled differently, publicly, a message instead of a quiet disappearance. Then his brother would have known better than to seek revenge." "You can't predict every consequence." "No, but I can learn from mistakes and not repeat them." He turned back to her. "When we find Michael, this will be different, public, unmistakable. So no one else gets ideas about avenging family members who made poor choices." Ivy nodded, understanding. This was the calculation of Adrian's world. Every action sent a message. Every consequence taught a lesson. Michael Castellano had thought he was avenging his brother. Instead, he just ensured his own death would be far more memorable. The search for Michael took 3 weeks. Adrian's organization and Jin Park's network working in concert proved devastatingly effective. Michael was located in Detroit, hiding with distant cousins and planning his next move against Adrian's operations. He never got the chance to execute those plans. The joint operation to extract Michael happened quietly. No shootouts, no bodies, just a man who went to sleep in Detroit and woke up in a Chicago warehouse surrounded by people who wanted answers. Adrian didn't tell Ivy the details of Michael's interrogation. She didn't ask. But 2 days after his capture, Adrian called a meeting of all major Chicago families. Ivy attended as part of Adrian's delegation, watching as representatives from every significant criminal organization in the city gathered in a downtown restaurant's private ballroom. The Korean delegation sat to Adrian's right, Jin Park and his associates, their presence announcing the new alliance. Other families filled the remaining seats, their leaders studying this unusual assembly with calculation and concern. Adrian stood when everyone had arrived. The room fell silent. "Thank you all for coming. I've called this meeting to address a situation that affects all of us. 3 weeks ago, someone attempted to create conflict between my organization and our Korean partners by fabricating documents and making fraudulent claims. That person was Michael Castellano, brother of Marcus Castellano, seeking revenge for family grievances." Adrian paused, letting that sink in. Michael's plan was sophisticated. He understood that conflict between major organizations destabilizes the entire city, creates opportunities for law enforcement, damages everyone's operations. He didn't care. He wanted revenge more than he wanted stability. Jin Park stood. "Michael Castellano also defrauded my organization of $50,000 and wasted our time with false claims. This kind of deception cannot be tolerated." "We agree," Adrian said, "which is why we're making an example, so everyone understands the consequences of trying to manipulate organizations against each other." At Adrian's signal, Dmitry and 2 Korean associates brought Michael Castellano into the ballroom. He was beaten but alive, terror evident in every line of his body. "Michael Castellano," Adrian's voice carried absolute authority, "you attempted to destroy the peace between organizations by fabricating evidence and creating false conflicts. You did this for revenge, for family. I understand that impulse, but understanding doesn't mean forgiveness." "Please," Michael tried to speak. Dmitry hit him hard enough to shut him up. "Your brother Marcus made choices that led to his death. He helped kidnap my son. He collaborated with the Rossi family in attacks on my operations. He earned his fate. You could have walked away. Instead, you chose revenge. That was a mistake. Adrian looked around the ballroom, making eye contact with each family's representative. This is the new reality in Chicago. My organization and the Korean partnership have zero tolerance for manipulation, deception, or attempts to create artificial conflicts between us. Anyone who tries will face consequences. Permanent consequences. Michael Castellano is the first example. He won't be the last if necessary. Jin Park spoke in Korean, his words sharp and final. One of his associates stepped forward, gun raised. Ivy looked away before the shot, but she heard it, heard the body fall. Heard the message being delivered in the universal language of violence that this world understood best. When she looked back, Michael Castellano was dead, and every representative in that ballroom understood exactly what would happen if they attempted similar deceptions. The meeting ended quickly after that. Families filed out in silence, processing the shift in Chicago's power dynamics. Adrian and Jin Park had announced an alliance publicly, had demonstrated they would jointly enforce stability, had eliminated a threat in front of witnesses. It was brutal, it was effective, and it ensured peace through fear, the oldest strategy in human history. In the car afterward, Ivy finally spoke. That was necessary? That was necessary, Adrian confirmed. Michael wouldn't have stopped. He'd have kept trying to destroy me by any means available, and his attempts would have created chaos that hurt everyone. This way, the message is sent. The Castellano problem is finished, and the city stays stable. At the cost of a life? At the cost of one life versus the dozens that would have died in the conflicts Michael was trying to create. Adrian looked at her seriously. I know this bothers you. I know you want there to be cleaner solutions, but there aren't. Not in this world. Sometimes the choice is between bad and worse. I choose bad so worse doesn't happen. Ivy understood the logic. She'd understood it for months now. But watching someone executed in front of her, even someone who'd tried to hurt Adrian's organization, felt different than knowing it happened out of sight. I'm not judging, she said quietly. I'm just processing. Take your time. Just remember that Michael made his choices knowing the risks. No one forced him to seek revenge. He chose that path himself. They rode in silence back to the Meridian. When they arrived, Adrian's phone rang. He answered, listened, and his entire expression transformed. When? Is he okay? I'll be there in 30 minutes. He hung up, turned to Dimitri. Change of plans. Take me to Rachel's place. There's been an incident. What kind of incident? Ivy asked. Luca collapsed at school. They're saying it might be his heart. Rachel's taking him to the hospital now. Adrian's voice shook, the first time Ivy had ever heard genuine fear crack through his control. I need to get there. I'm coming with you. Ivy, you don't have to sue it. I'm coming with you, she repeated firmly. The hospital was a blur of fluorescent lights and antiseptic smells and terrible waiting. Rachel was there, pale and frightened, barely acknowledging Adrian as they rushed Luca into emergency cardiac evaluation. Ivy stood beside Adrian in the waiting room, watching him struggle to maintain composure while his son's life hung in the balance. He's been tired lately, Rachel said quietly, speaking to no one in particular. I thought it was just school. Stress from the kidnapping. I never thought. It's not your fault, Adrian said. His voice was gentler than Ivy had ever heard it. Kids hide symptoms. You couldn't have known. If he dies, he's not going to die. Adrian said it with absolute conviction, as if he could will it into truth through sheer determination. 2 hours later, a doctor emerged. Mr. and Mrs. Volkov. We're divorced, Rachel said, but yes, we're Luca's parents. Your son has a congenital heart defect. It's been asymptomatic until now, but the stress from recent events likely triggered today's episode. He's stable, but he'll need surgery to correct the problem. When? Adrian asked. Within the next few weeks. We'll need to run more tests, but the procedure is routine. Success rate is over 95%. I want the best surgeon. Money is no object. We have excellent cardiac surgeons here, the best in the country. I want them here, in Chicago, operating on my son. Whatever it costs, whatever needs to happen, make it happen. Adrian's voice left no room for argument. The doctor nodded. I'll coordinate with administration. You can see him now. He's asking for both of you. Luca looked small in the hospital bed, monitors beeping steadily, IV in his arm. But he was awake, alert, and trying to smile when his parents entered. "Hey, buddy," Adrian said, taking his son's hand carefully. "How are you feeling?" "Tired, kind of scared." Luca looked between his parents. "Am I going to die?" "No," Adrian said firmly. "You're going to have surgery, the doctors are going to fix your heart, and then you're going to be fine. Better than fine. Stronger. Promise?" "I promise." Adrian's voice broke slightly. "I'm not going to let anything happen to you. Ever." Rachel was crying silently, holding Luca's other hand. The three of them, a broken family held together by love for a child, looked like a painting of complicated devotion. Ivy stayed back, giving them space. This wasn't her moment. This was family. But Luca saw her anyway. "Ivy, are you here too?" "I'm here," she confirmed, stepping closer. "Good. I'm glad you're here." His eyes drifted closed, exhaustion winning. "You and Dad, you make me feel safe." He fell asleep holding both his parents' hands, unaware of the tears streaming down their faces. In the hospital cafeteria later, while Luca rested, Adrian sat across from Ivy looking more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. "I can't lose him," he said quietly. "Everything I've built, everything I've done, it's all meaningless if I lose him." "You won't. The doctor said 95% success rate. Those are good odds. 95% means 5% chance of failure. 5% chance I lose my son because I didn't notice he was sick, because I was too busy fighting wars and building empires to pay attention to what mattered." "Adrian, stop. This isn't your fault. Heart defects are congenital. They happen. You couldn't have prevented it." "Maybe, but I could have noticed sooner. Could have been more present instead of constantly managing crises." He looked at his coffee without drinking it. Rachel was right to leave. This life, my life, it destroys everything it touches, even the people I'm trying to protect. That's not true. Luca loves you. He feels safe with you. You heard him say it. He said he feels safe with you and me together. Maybe that's the answer. Maybe I need... Adrian stopped himself. "Never mind. That's not fair to ask." "Ask what?" "For you to be part of this. Part of helping Luca through the surgery and recovery. You've already done so much, risked so much. I can't ask for more." Ivy reached across the table, took his hand. It was the first time she'd initiated physical contact, and she felt him freeze in surprise. "You're not asking. I'm offering. I'll be here. For the surgery, for the recovery, for whatever comes after. Because Luca matters to me too, and so do you." The admission hung between them, weighted with implications neither was ready to fully examine. But Adrian squeezed her hand, gratitude and something deeper flickering across his face. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for everything, for being here, for being you." The surgery was scheduled for 3 weeks later. Adrian hired the country's leading pediatric cardiac surgeon, brought in specialists for consultation, and essentially turned Luca's medical care into a military operation with backup plans and contingencies. Ivy spent those weeks helping where she could, keeping Luca company when both parents needed breaks, managing Adrian's business obligations so he could focus on his son, being the stable presence that held things together while everyone else dealt with fear and uncertainty. She also grew closer to Luca in ways that surprised her. The 8-year-old was funny and smart and remarkably brave about the upcoming surgery. He asked questions about her life, about growing up in foster care, about what made her decide to work for his father. "You're kind of like a superhero," Luca told her one afternoon while they played video games in his hospital room during pre-surgery prep. "You saved me from the bad guys, you helped my dad with important stuff, and you're really smart." "I'm not a superhero. I'm just someone who tries to help." "That's what superheroes do, though. They help people." Luca paused the game, looked at her seriously. "My mom doesn't like that you work for my dad. She thinks you're dangerous. What do you think?" "I think you're brave, and I think my dad is happier when you're around. He smiles more." Luca went back to the game. "I hope you stay. After the surgery and everything, I hope you don't leave." "I'm not going anywhere," Ivy promised, and meant it. The day of surgery arrived with cruel normality. Sun shining, city noise drifting through hospital windows, life continuing while Luka Volkov was wheeled into an operating room for 4 hours of delicate cardiac repair. Adrian and Rachel waited together in a private room the hospital had provided. Ivy sat with them, offering silent support while they processed fear in their different ways. Rachel prayed quietly. Adrian paced, made phone calls he didn't need to make, tried to control a situation that was completely beyond his control. "I've faced down armed enemies," he said at one point, "survived assassination attempts, built an organization from nothing, and none of it prepared me for this. For sitting here powerless while my son's life depends on someone else's skill." "That's parenthood," Rachel said quietly. Constant terror disguised as love. "How do you handle it?" "I don't. I keep going. I trust that the universe won't be cruel enough to take him, and I try not to think about the 5%. They sat in silence after that, united by fear and love and the terrible waiting. 4 hours became 5. 5 became 6. The surgeon had warned them it might take longer. Hearts were complicated. Pediatric surgery required extra precision. Complications could extend the timeline. But knowing that didn't make the waiting easier. Finally, after 6.5 hours, the surgeon appeared still in scrubs. "The surgery was successful," she said, and Rachel actually collapsed with relief. "We encountered some complications with scar tissue, which extended the timeline, but everything went well. Luca's in recovery now. He'll need to stay in ICU overnight for monitoring, but barring any unexpected issues, he should make a full recovery." Adrian didn't cry, but Ivy saw moisture in his eyes as he thanked the surgeon with a level of genuine gratitude she'd never heard from him before. They were allowed to see Luca an hour later. He was unconscious, breathing with machine assistance, looking fragile and small, but the monitors showed strong, steady heart rhythm. The surgery had worked. "My baby," Rachel whispered, touching his hand gently. "My brave, beautiful baby." Adrian stood on the other side of the bed, and for a moment, the three of them were family again. Broken, complicated, held together by machinery and love, and the child who'd somehow survived every terrible thing the world had thrown at him. Ivy watched from the doorway, feeling like an intruder on something sacred. But Adrian looked up, saw her, and gestured for her to come in. "You should be here," he said. "You're part of this too." And somehow, impossibly, she was. Luca's recovery took 6 weeks. 6 weeks of careful monitoring, physical therapy, medication adjustments, and gradual return to normal childhood activities. Adrian rearranged his entire life around his son's needs. Meetings rescheduled, operations delayed, business put on hold while he focused on what actually mattered. Ivy watched him transform from crime boss to devoted father, saw the softness underneath the calculated violence, and understood finally what drove him. It wasn't power or money or empire. It was this child, this future he was trying to protect by controlling everything around it. The business didn't fall apart in his absence. Victor and Dimitri handled day-to-day operations. The alliance with Jin Park remained strong, and Ivy found herself taking on more responsibility, making decisions she'd never have been trusted with 6 months ago. "You're a natural leader," Victor told her one day while they reviewed financial reports. "People respect you. Not because you're Adrian's favorite, but because you've proven yourself reliable." "I just do my job." "You do everyone's job when needed. That's leadership." Victor looked at her seriously. "When Adrian comes back full-time, things will be different. You'll have real authority. Are you ready for that?" "I don't know. Authority in a criminal organization wasn't exactly my career goal. But here you are anyway, making it work, making yourself valuable." Victor smiled. "Life is funny that way. We end up places we never planned, doing things we never imagined, and somehow it becomes exactly where we're supposed to be." Ivy thought about that. About the night she delivered Mongolian beef and accidentally saved a business deal. About every choice since that had led her deeper into Adrian's world. About becoming someone who mattered, instead of someone who was invisible. "Yeah," she said quietly. "I guess it is where I'm supposed to be." 8 weeks after the surgery, Luca was declared fully recovered. His heart was strong, his energy back, his smile constant. He returned to school with strict instructions about avoiding contact sports, but otherwise cleared for normal life. Rachel threw a small celebration dinner. Just family, she said, which apparently now included Ivy. They gathered at Rachel's apartment, the 4 of them, eating pizza and watching Luca demonstrate his improved video game skills. I'm faster now, he announced. My heart was making me slow before. Now I'm super fast. Super fast and super modest, Adrian teased, ruffling his son's hair. Watching them together, father and son, easy affection, normal family moment, Ivy felt something shift inside her. This was what she'd been protecting, not Adrian's empire or business interests or criminal operations. This, a child's laughter, a father's love, the ordinary magic of family dinner on a Tuesday night. Later, after Luca had gone to bed and Rachel was cleaning up, Adrian found Ivy on the apartment's small balcony looking out at Chicago's lights. "Thank you," he said, "for everything these past 2 months. For being there when I needed you, for holding things together when I couldn't. You'd have done the same for me. Would I? I'm not sure I'm capable of that kind of selflessness." Adrian joined her at the railing. "You've changed things, Ivy. Not just the organization, me, the way I see this life and what matters in it." "What matters?" "This, tonight. Luca healthy and happy, people I can trust. Building something that lasts longer than just my ability to enforce it through fear." He paused. "I have a proposition for you. Another job. A promotion. I want you as my second in command, full partner in operations. Equal authority to Dimitri and Victor. Real power, real responsibility, real stake in everything we build." Ivy turned to look at him fully. "Why?" "Because you've earned it. Because I trust you. And because I think together we could build something better than what I've created alone." Adrian's expression was serious, vulnerable. "I'm offering you a real place in this organization, not as an employee or consultant, as family." "Adrian, Don't answer now. Think about it. What it means, what you'd be accepting, what you'd be giving up, and then decide." He pulled out a small box from his pocket, handed it to her. "But whatever you decide, I want you to have this." Ivy opened the box to find a ring, simple gold band with a small diamond. Not engagement ring-sized, but not nothing either. "It's a promise," Adrian said, "that you have a place here, that you're protected, that you matter." He took her hand, slipped the ring onto her right hand. "Whether you take the promotion or not, whether you stay in this life or not, you're family now. That doesn't change." Ivy looked at the ring, feeling the weight of it, the commitment it represented, the life she'd accidentally stumbled into and somehow made her own. "I'll think about it," she said, "about the promotion, about everything. That's all I ask." They stood there in comfortable silence, watching Chicago breathe and glow beneath them. And Ivy realized with quiet certainty that she'd already made her decision. She'd made it months ago when she'd spoken Russian instead of running. She'd made it when she'd thrown herself in front of a bullet. She'd made it every day she'd chosen to stay instead of leave. She belonged here, in this complicated, dangerous, strange family, with this man who'd given her purpose and protection and something that felt remarkably like love, even if neither of them were ready to name it that way. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay, what?" "Okay, I accept. The promotion, the partnership, all of it." Ivy met his eyes. "I'm all in, Adrian. Whatever comes next, I'm here." Adrian's smile was genuine, relieved, happy in a way she'd never seen. "Then welcome to the family business, partner. Try not to get us all killed." "I'll do my best." He laughed, pulled her into a hug that surprised them both. And for a moment, standing on a balcony in Chicago with the crime boss's arms around her and his son sleeping safely nearby, Ivy Hale felt something she'd never experienced in 26 years of survival. She felt home. 2 months later, Adrian called a meeting of all Chicago families. The ballroom where they'd executed Michael Castellano was transformed into something different. Not an execution chamber, but a conference room, tables arranged for actual negotiation rather than demonstration. Every major organization sent representatives. The Koreans, of course, with Jin Park greeting Adrian like an old friend. But also the remnants of smaller crews, independent operators, everyone who made Chicago's criminal landscape function. Adrian stood at the head of the room with Ivy beside him. "Thank you all for coming," he began. 6 months ago, this city was on the edge of war. Territory disputes, kidnappings, revenge killings. We were destroying ourselves from within. That's over now. Today, I'm proposing something different." He gestured to Ivy. "Many of you know Ivy Hale. She's been instrumental in resolving several conflicts through intelligence and negotiation rather than violence. She's proven that there are better ways to handle disputes than open warfare. Jin Park stood. We've seen this firsthand. The Korean partnership with the Volkov organization has been profitable and stable because of systems she helped establish. Exactly, Adrian said. So I'm proposing we expand that model, create a council, representatives from each major organization to mediate disputes, establish fair rules for territory and operations, and maintain stability through cooperation rather than constant conflict. The room erupted in murmurs. This was radical. Criminal organizations didn't cooperate. They competed. They didn't establish councils. They established dominance. Why would we agree to this? Someone asked. Because constant war is expensive and draws law enforcement attention we can't afford. Because stability is more profitable than chaos. And because, Adrian paused for effect, the alternative is watching the city tear itself apart while federal investigations destroy everyone's operations. Ivy spoke up, her voice carrying authority she'd earned through months of proven competence. This isn't about giving up power. It's about pooling resources to protect all of our interests. We'd still compete for business, still operate independently, but we'd have mechanisms to resolve conflicts before they escalate to violence. And who leads this council? Another voice asked. No one leads it. It's a consensus body. Each organization gets one vote. Decisions require a supermajority to pass. No single person or group can dominate. Ivy had spent weeks designing this system, modeling it on everything she'd learned about Chicago's criminal ecology. The goal is stability, not control. The debate lasted 3 hours. Questions, concerns, arguments about implementation and enforcement. But gradually, grudgingly, consensus emerged. The alternative, continued warfare that benefited no one, was worse than trying something new. By the end of the meeting, 15 organizations had agreed to the council. Not everyone. Some preferred independence, some couldn't trust cooperation, but enough to create real stability. This is your legacy, Adrian told Ivy afterward, in the car heading back to the Meridian. Not the violence or the territory or the money. This. Building something that lasts. Our legacy, Ivy corrected. I couldn't have done this without your support. Maybe, but I wouldn't have thought to try without you pushing me toward better solutions. Adrian took her hand, the one wearing the ring he'd given her. You've changed everything, Ivy Hale. Made me better than I was. Made this organization something worth building instead of just worth protecting. We're not done yet. The council will take years to establish properly. Some organizations will resist, some will fail. We'll have to constantly adapt. Good thing we're patient and strategic. Adrian smiled. And good thing I have a partner I trust completely. They rode in comfortable silence. Two people who'd found each other accidentally and built something intentional from that chance encounter. Not quite romance, though something lived in the space between them that might become that eventually. Not quite family, though loyalty bound them tighter than blood. Something new. Something that didn't have easy definitions but worked anyway. 6 months later, Ivy stood in the penthouse that had become her permanent home, looking out at Chicago and thinking about the journey that had brought her here. From delivery girl to crime boss's partner, from invisible to indispensable, from surviving to actually living. Her phone buzzed with a message from Luca. Can you come to my soccer game Saturday? Dad's bringing his camera to embarrass me. She smiled, typed back. Wouldn't miss it. Someone needs to protect you from parental enthusiasm. Another message, this time from Victor. The Southeast Side crew wants to bring a dispute to the council. Can you mediate? Schedule it for Tuesday, she replied. I'll review the case details tonight. This was her life now. Mediating criminal disputes, attending children's soccer games, building systems that made a violent world slightly less violent. It wasn't the life she'd imagined when she'd knocked on a penthouse door 6 months ago carrying Mongolian beef. It was better. Adrian emerged from his office, saw her standing by the window, and joined her. Thinking deep thoughts? Thinking about how strange life is. How one decision, speaking Russian when I should have stayed silent, changed absolutely everything. The best mistake you ever made. Was it a mistake, though? Or was it exactly what was supposed to happen? Does it matter? You're here now. That's what counts. Adrian slipped his arm around her waist, easy affection that had developed over months of partnership. The council meeting is next week. You ready? Always ready. That's my job. Your job is being brilliant and saving me from my own worst impulses. Someone has to. Ivy leaned into him, comfortable with proximity that would have terrified her 6 months ago. Think we can actually make this work? The council, the stability, all of it? With you running it? Absolutely. Adrian pressed a kiss to her temple, casual, affectionate, full of trust. You're the best decision I ever made, Ivy Hale. Hiring you, trusting you, making you family. Right back at you, Volkov. They stood there watching Chicago's sunset paint the sky in orange and gold. Two people who'd found belonging in the unlikeliest place, building a future from the broken pieces of their pasts. Somewhere in the city below, criminals conducted business, and families ate dinner, and life continued in all its complicated glory. And in a penthouse above it all, a former delivery girl and a crime boss who'd become something more than their beginnings stood together, ready for whatever came next. It wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be clean. But it would be theirs. And sometimes that was enough. Sometimes that was everything. The end.